So, hello there. Once again, we are here to present our findings, or whatever you may call it, after, doing another month of uh, finding stuff
Media
to,
uncovery.
yeah, exactly, media
Yeah.
coverage, whatever we want
hmm
to call it. And that's what we're doing today. And, let's just get into it, Peter, because, it's going to be long enough of a video without all these 10-minute long intros about life and other random shit. We just need to. That's what's
Get
great about this
straight to
podcast is
business.
what we just jump straight into whatever shit we're talking about here.
All right. Well, in the past month, then I would say, starting off with movies as we normally do,
Mm,
I finished up the rest of the James Bond
ooh,
filmography,
here we
and
go.
I can't remember exactly where we left off, but I think I was just getting out of the Roger Moore era and
Mm-hmm.
getting to the very short Timothy Dalton stay, and
Yeah.
then also into the Pierce Brosnan
Mm-hmm.
films. And I have to say, it's like it's a pretty bad franchise
Oh yeah.
overall. Largely, I think most of the movies are like incredibly like just by the books recipe. You know what you're gonna get, and they're kind of campy and fun and weird. Um, but I wouldn't say they're the most engaging films or film franchise by any means. I would say I enjoyed the Timothy Dalton ones more than the Roger Moore ones,
Okay.
and I think Connery and Craig are probably my top ones,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then Pierce Brosnan after that. I couldn't get into any of the Roger Moore ones. I'm not gonna lie. I think there was a handful of good ones, but it's just something about them. Whether they're like, I know people love to
Dated
celebrate
for
them for how
various
campy they
reasons.
are, and yes, obviously all of these are incredibly dated. Um, but yeah, I wouldn't say I loved my time spent with the Bond franchise, but I'm glad I went through them all. They are, you know, a cinematic landmark, and one of the most enduring film franchises of all time,
Somehow
probably.
still, yeah, to this
Yeah,
day, people still love it.
yeah.
There was the
There's,
Science and Industry had that James Bond exhibit, which I went to,
mm-hmm.
and it's it was nice. It was quite good because they had like a bunch of random, like vehicles. They had the
Mm-hmm.
car that had like shown up in
Cool,
a
cool.
couple varying movies. They had the Golden Gun from The Man with the Golden Gun. They had Jaws's Jaws, like metal Jaws.
That's kind of
If you
sick.
remember that lovable
Just all the hit. Yes,
henchman
yes.
character,
Went out with a
unforgettable.
bang.
Yeah,
Went out with a bang.
it was all right. Something I wanted to add. I mentioned last time. This doesn't matter because nobody cares. But I mentioned last time that there was that one movie where he got married and then that was never mentioned again. That was
Mm-hmm.
false because they do briefly mention it. I think in at least
Do
one or
they?
two of them, but like it doesn't really
Really?
matter at all.
Yeah, I do remember them mentioning
Yeah,
Jaws. Um, but yeah, the fact that they just got married and then blew up
hmm
is it was
but like
it
the
was a
confusing
funny
thing is,
funny
it's
comment.
like it was with a different James Bond because that dude was only cast
Yeah,
as during that one
yeah.
role. It's
That was one
supposed
of
to
the
be this.
last
It's supposed to be
movies
the same
for
characters, plural, like the same
right.
James Bond and
Yeah.
M and
Mm-hmm.
Q question mark, unless the new guy. Well, because the age difference between uh, there was the one dude and then it was
Yeah.
the fucking
Q
Monty
got
Python
replaced at the
dude, and
very
then
end.
the
Yeah.
other, the
Yeah.
younger guy. So I think there's supposed to be two
Yeah.
different dudes for that. And M is a dude, and then in the Daniel Craig ones is a woman. I think the Daniel Craig ones is
Yeah.
much of a stronger reboot thing, and it's less of like this is the
Well,
same character again, or is it?
who is
Because then that would be
um
like way too long of a thing. Because I think we're supposed to believe that this takes place within a shorter amount of time than when the movies are spread apart. You know what I mean?
yeah, I think Judi Dench was introduced as M
Oh yeah, she
during the
was.
Pierce
She was.
Brosnan
Yeah, yeah,
ones.
yeah. You're right.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, the Pierce Brosnan ones are were more of the like modern tropes or modern characters for the Bond franchises
That's true.
have been introduced that they're still playing the same characters for the most part.
Peter, very important question. Who's the best Bond girl? There's only one correct answer, and it should be very obvious.
Bond girl, bro. I don't even remember more than half of them. I'm gonna be straight up. I like, I. You
Who's the one
remember,
who stood
I guess, their
out the
code name?
most? In other words,
In
a good
modern
way.
day. Well, Michelle Yeoh
Yes.
was
That's it.
fantastic.
That's it.
And Tomorrow Never Dies.
That's the answer. That's the answer I was looking for. And, it should be
Yes.
especially apparent, like, if you watch all of them in a row.
The
or
rest
like,
of them.
Yeah, when you,
Yes.
when you like, binge
It's
all of them.
It's a breath of fresh air.
I know.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, because it's like, I mean, the like we've mentioned before, like last time, the movies are a little dated. They have,
Yes.
slightly different ways of depicting female characters than modern day most of the time.
Yes.
And like they do things where it's like there's a female agent or spy or like a sort of rival to him who he tries to sleep with or whatever. But like the purpose of them is that they also do action stuff, and you never believe it ever because it's essentially just like fashion models like throwing like really shitty punches, but like Michelle Yeoh is going in there and she's like kicking off of walls and like flipping around and like doing real shit, and it's like oh my god,
You can tell.
that's
yeah.
that's an action person that has done this before, and she stands out for that reason, and she's easily the best, and if people say otherwise, they're lying.
They're wrong. Indeed.
So I just wanted to mention that. But yeah, that's
Uh-huh.
so you got through all of them. You're not going to revisit the Daniel Craig ones because if I do
No,
that.
I do enjoy. I think I enjoy Craig's
Yeah.
filmography the most out of any of the franchise heads, but I don't need to go back to it, especially when I think the final three movies, or like the latter half of the Daniel Craig stay was not my favorite.
Sure.
I thought a lot of
They're not
like,
all winners.
from like Spectre on was like really boring, and not very enjoyable.
Yeah. I think I did the same thing when I binged all of them. I just watched all of those and then just said like forget it to like the
Yeah.
Daniel Craig ones, which I had seen before. Because it's like, I already know those are a bit stronger in general than
I watched all
older
of them, all of the Daniel Craig ones right before I watched No Time to Die, which I think came
okay.
out like 3 or 4 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember most of them
Yeah.
well enough to keep those in my mind.
All right, yeah. Well, if that's all you got for, one of the greatest franchises of all time, I'll flip it over to a thing I saw, which I guess was a part of another franchise. We need to stop visiting these goddamn things if we keep complaining about them. But I did see Superman Returns, which is a sequel / reboot to the like 1970 and 80s Superman movies that starred Christopher Reeve, and it's supposed to be the same character, same universe, just with different actors portraying them. And it's weird because it takes place 5 years after the events of the second movie, and they kind of just ignore the third and fourth movies within that series. There's 4 of them in total. The first one's decent, the second one's okay, and then the third and fourth ones are just progressively worse, and ending with like the Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, is just one of the like biggest piece of shits I've ever seen. Actually, fun fact, Jupiter lore coming at you right here. The first, like the test recording I used to test the camera we use for our live action stuff is me reacting to the second half of Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. So I'm not going to upload that to YouTube, but hey, if we ever get a Patreon or some shit, I could be up there. Why not?
A formative movie.
And yeah, it takes place 5 years after the events of Superman 2, and Superman just kind of fucks off for 5 years, and then he comes back, and Lois Lane is like with some other dude and has like a kid with him, and Superman is still like obsessing over her, and it's like, Jesus Christ, man, move on. You are Superman. There's 8 billion ladies on the planet. Just go. Just stop. Like, she's just one person, you know. And it was 5 years of you just like, I don't even know why you left to begin with. They probably said it in this long ass movie. It's like almost 2.5 hours, or it is, which I could pull it up. And yeah, it is just like not good at all. And
When did it come out?
it's 2006, and the
Okay.
other movies came out like 20 years prior. And it's again, it's a weird sort of sea where it's a sequel and a reboot, and it's trying to continue off where the story left off. It's trying to pick up where the story left off, but it's also rehashing certain plot points from the first movie, and it's just going about it in so much of a worse way. The main dude, the lead actor, is Brandon Ruth, who I've never heard of, and he's playing Superman, which was previously done by Christopher Reeve. And the direction he's given, he's like trying to play the exact same character, and it's like trying to talk exactly like him in the same like tone and like just the same voice in general, and it sort of works. But like some of the other acting in this is just like not great. Like whoever played Lois is, you know, not very good either. Kevin Spacey is Lex Luthor, which, I mean, you know, he could play villains. He's not a bad actor. He's a bad person, but you know,
Yeah.
as far as acting goes, I can't argue with, okay, yeah, sure, he's good, he's fine. But in this movie, it's not like, oh my god, he's the best Lex Luthor ever. It's like the villain in this, he's such an idiot. I mean, all the characters are in this because it has such a weird tone where it's trying to, I think, appeal to like a younger crowd, but like in doing so, it appeals to nobody because it's just shit. It's just shit all around, and it's, you know, it's not as bad as the Superman 4. The Quest for Peace, it's not on that level.
I did not realize that the Brandon Ruth movie is in the same
Yeah.
movie series
No,
as
it's-
the Christopher Reeve ones.
yeah, it's
I would
weird,
have
right?
expected if you have two different Supermen, then like they normally just
Sure.
start over. But
Normally.
that's a strange choice.
Not with, who did this? Bryan Singer, who had done a couple of the X-Men movies to varying degrees of success, and he did The Usual Suspects. Most recently, I guess it was Bohemian Rhapsody, but that was him. So he has an interesting track record of some ups, some downs.
He does.
I'd say like
can't
pretty
remember.
even all
I
around.
think he's problematic for some reason.
Oh,
But I could be misremembering.
let's see if the letterbox gives any details, because sometimes they do, but not for this man.
Yeah, he hasn't been doing anything too recently.
Because of some controversy over the man. Good. Keep
Could
him
be.
out of this shit. So yeah, that's Superman Returns. It's way too long, and it's just bad in general. So yeah.
All right. On my end, after I finished up with what was like a month
Oh yeah, man.
or more
You were
of like
dedicated.
just watching James Bond movies only, I got some kind of belated Halloween movies in. I ended up watching Death Becomes Her and the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Okay.
Both of those I enjoyed quite a lot. I thought Death Becomes Her with Meryl Streep was a ton of fun. It's super funny. Robert Zemeckis is obviously does very well with these kind of movies, kind of lighthearted, but also it has a bit to say. And I think that was a very, very fun movie. And the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which I'd seen so much about, you know, Tim Curry. I feel like it's a very iconic movie.
Yeah, totally.
You see a bunch of the lips and the font is very replicated.
That one character from One Piece, Ivankov, is that it?
Yeah, exactly. Basically,
Literally just this
straight
character,
yeah,
but exaggerated
straight up.
slightly.
Yeah. And it was fun. I have started to watch more and more musicals, I guess, that I will get into as we continue on in this episode. But I have, they're always a little weird for me. Like I want to be able to like fully buy in, and sometimes I can. I think this movie was good about that, keeping me engaged, and kind of, it's all in that like very super over the top campy kind of style, where like all the actors are playing like hamming it up, and it doesn't make it too hard to like buy into when they inevitably break out into song and dance at various points in the movie. I think it just fit in well with the rest of the film, and they were both, I'd say, worthy movies to watch that had been on my watch list for a while.
Yeah, for sure. I've seen the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and yeah, that one's decent, especially if like, I mean, even if you aren't too into musicals, maybe it'll do something for you. I'm not sure if it's the one to get you into them or whatever.
It's pretty funny in general, but yeah, I don't know if I would recommend it as someone's first musical.
Yeah, yeah. I guess West Side Story should probably be the first because it's, you know, a little bit more of the
classic.
basic of a story. I really like that one, but it's like, I don't know. It's maybe an easier first, like, you know, if someone had to pick a thing to get into musicals, maybe that one. I'm not sure though. Neither of us have that theater kid background or.
No, we do not.
So, people in the comments, what's the best musical to watch for first time viewing? Go, type now. Assuming we get any. But yeah. So for next for me, I got this one called Phenomena, which is Dario Argento, who we talked about a little bit a time before with he did Suspiria, the original, and did he do the remake or was that somebody else? I guess that was somebody else.
That was someone else. That was Luca Guadagnino.
Okay. Yeah, and Phenomena is another sort of horror picture. I guess that's sort of what the man specializes in. And it's just about this girl attending this like young girl academy place thing, and she has this weird she's able to like communicate sort of with bugs and stuff or like insects, and I don't know, just weird shit happens. And I know about it from watching YouTube videos of this game called Clock Tower, which was a game released on the SNES in 1995. And this game, the Clock Tower, is pretty heavily inspired by Dario Argento's things in general, but especially Phenomena, because like the protagonist in that game, her name is Jennifer. Phenomena stars Jennifer Connelly as like the main sort of character in that. And then there's also a moment in Phenomena where like the villain is walking around with scissors and like stabbing people with it. And in Clock Tower, there's this enemy who just runs at you with scissors and shit like that. And you know, I'm sure there's other stuff. I don't have all those goddamn horror
Easter
game
eggs, yeah.
SNES horror games list best of hidden gems, like those videos memorized. And I'm sure there's more to draw into that from. But yeah, and watching this, it's a decent time if you. I don't know who I would recommend this kind of stuff to, because it is kind of campy and there is some voiceover dub because it's like an Italian actor and he's doing it with, I don't know how good his English is, but there was a couple scenes where they dubbed over even Jennifer Connelly's voice in like by someone else in English, I think, or there might have been somewhere it was just straight up Italian. Like I don't even remember. Sure, it was almost a month ago.
I'm pretty sure the director Dario Argento is like known for doing that, where he will have like all of the actors like deliver their lines in their own language, just like whatever is natural to them, and then dub over it, which I think is what they did for the Suspiria.
And sometimes
so I guess he does that for all of his movies.
Yeah.
And even I guess you dub over even.
Well, that's what confused me, because I guess he
English?
just really didn't like the way she sounded that one specific time, so he had somebody else do it, or like maybe the audio was fucked up and like I don't know.
Yeah.
It was weird. But yeah, I'm usually fine with audio dubbing unless it's like super noticeable. But it does, I guess, happen a couple times in this. But it's not a bad movie at all. I'd say for a horror movie, it's quite decent, and I would recommend this one especially a lot more over fucking Superman Returns, because at least this one's under 2 hours, slightly.
How would you compare it to Suspiria?
I like it about the same. I might like the original Suspiria better, slightly. But yeah, I would rate them about the same. I think generally people like Suspiria more, just based on the average Letterboxd ratings, 3.9 versus 3.6. But they're both still good things, so I'd recommend it. If you did like original Suspiria, you'll probably like this one as well. It's just as, it's not like as out there, but it's still pretty weird and a little creepy. So it's got some good
I'll
visual
have to
horror
check
in
it
there.
out. I will have to check it out then.
Mm-hmm.
All right. As I continued along in my watching journey, I ended up watching the new film from famed director Francis Ford Coppola,
Oh shit.
Megalopolis,
Yeah.
the film that was the talk of the town for a minute. And then fairly quickly, I feel like everyone stopped talking about it because
Yeah.
no one actually went to watch it. Sucks, but I'll say this now, having watched it, I wouldn't have wanted to see it in the theaters in general. I think it's a pretty bad movie. Like what everyone has said has already been said, but
Yeah.
it's messy, it's extravagant, it's so weird. Like the acting is so off-putting. It's so strange. It's like I can't tell if the actors like just don't want to be there and are like hate having to read this like really bad dialogue at some point. It's very strange. It's clumsy. Just like too many pieces that don't fit together into a cohesive film. I think I'll give it this much. It's like some of the ideas it raises are interesting and worth exploring, and they should probably have been done in a better way than what Francis Ford Coppola did in this one. It's too long. The dialogue does not work to further the goals of the narrative. The narrative is fighting against the themes, and it's just none of it works together. It's a strange viewing experience. Some moments are kind of cool and like interesting, but I'd say the majority of it is just very jarring. um, it was certainly a movie to watch.
Yeah,
I
but
do. I want to hear your thoughts on it when you eventually
yeah, I'll
watch it, just because it's a very strange one.
yeah, I did want to check it out at some point relatively soon. Like, what is it even
Yeah,
about? It's like a dude, he's trying to like build like a
a
utopia city.
utopia.
Okay.
Yeah, the amount of times they mention
They say the
utopia,
word.
which hey, considering another media property that I am
Ooh,
now playing through,
I was thinking that already. I
it-
was about to say it, but
yeah,
I'm like, wait a minute, I shouldn't say it. I
yeah,
shouldn't reveal
it
that.
is. It is very
Yeah.
timely for me, I guess. But I can't say I would recommend it. I think it's too long, too meandering, and it's kind of funny. It's just because of how weird it is and
Yeah.
like how unique. But I'd say the overall watching experience does not justify the, I guess, having to put myself through
Yeah.
watching this again.
Like not something you laugh at like while watching it, but like once you're
Yeah,
done, you just like, what the fuck was that? Like kind of thing.
yeah, yeah. It's just like this is how you decided to film all like the concepts when you read the intro or like the title blog
Sure.
and then you watch the movie. It could not be more jarring and strange. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh god damn. Can't wait to see it. On my end, I uh checked out this movie called Excalibur, which is I think from
Okay.
the 80s or something. Let me see. Um 81. And yeah, it's a sort of a telling of the King Arthur's just story in general. And I going into this had I'd say about average knowledge of King Arthur's like story thing where
Mm-hmm.
I know the sword and the stone shit. I know the Holy Grail. We got to go find it. But I didn't like know everything in between and like why each of those things was really happening. So watching this was quite interesting, and it's over 2 hours, I think. Yeah, an hour 41 minutes. And honestly, it doesn't really like feel that long, especially compared to Superman Returns. Um, but this one, it it still feels like too tight, even though it's 2 hours and 20 minutes. Like the pacing is just a little too fast. Where we're because there's a lot kind of going on here, honestly. But it does feel like it's a matter of we're moving too quickly from one thing to another without letting certain things maybe linger on. And I don't know how long like apparently this is based on some sort of book called Le Mort d'Arthur, which I guess is some French book about Arthur's life or whatever. And I don't know, maybe they should have split it up into multiple films or make it a mini series or something. I don't know. But they tried to stick it all in one film, and I'd say they did reasonably well. I'm not like super into it, because it's like I don't know. It is that kind of camp that you either really buy into or you're just kind of like not super into it. Which I could see myself maybe visiting this again someday and enjoying it. But it's got that like exact sort of line delivery, like very dramatic delivery of for every character, everything they're saying. That same like mostly the same like British, like old timey British accent they use for the medieval accents. Though sometimes they use like Welsh or Scottish accents maybe. And yeah, it's just all around like it's hard for it to like all come together, but I did appreciate watching it because it made me think just how many stories in general sort of fed off of things either directly or fed off from things that like were inspired by this story. Like is this being like the basis of, because I feel like a lot of ideas for certain things have been borrowed maybe as a result of this thing existing. Because there's a lot of sort of just character roles and drama pieces and even set pieces and just lore and the whole action like purpose of everything. I feel like a lot was drawn from it, so I think that the story of it is pretty inspirational, and if you enjoy stories in general, then I would recommend I guess either seeking out the King Arthur story or whatever, and if you want a sort of quicker version of it, there's this movie rather than the book, I guess, or whatever other medium exists out there. So I'd recommend it to that crowd and people if you really like medieval like just shit in general. There's like that sort of combat. There's this sort of like weird magic shit going on. It's interesting for sure. So I would slightly recommend it. I didn't fully enjoy it too much, but I think most people maybe would enjoy it. So that's my thing.
I feel like the tales of King Arthur are like such a like an archetypal kind of tale that has now fed into the wider like cultural zeitgeist just through its popularity in the fantasy genre, where a ton of early fantasy was inspired by English like folklore and tales and like kind of Welsh, kind of European folklore. And so King Arthur then kind of survived through the years as such a popular kind of chronology of the time and just a very kind of period piece to some extent, just because everyone loves that the medieval setting. It's very captivating. And
it's very much that with a good touch of the supernatural. So yeah.
All right. The next movie I ended up watching was Kinds of Kindness by Yorgos Lanthimos, who just last year came out with The Wonderful Poor Things, and he immediately follows it up with Kinds of Kindness, which is a much different movie than Poor Things, but it is essentially told as three kind of short movies in one, where you get three different tales, all using the same set of actors, exploring different kind of short stories. And I enjoyed it. I think Yorgos is one of the most interesting and talented directors working today.
Yeah,
I
totally.
think his work is some of my favorite, and this is maybe not one of my favorites from his, but I think if you like any of his other films, you're gonna like this one,
Hmm.
just because of the tone is much more in line with some of his earlier stuff rather than like a Poor Things or The Favorite, where those are more of his, I guess, more straightforward or like more narrative
Yeah, if you could call them
driven, I guess.
that.
They're like a little easier to follow,
Uh-huh.
whereas like a Dogtooth or a Lobster or a Killing of the Sacred Deer are much more kind of strange,
Hmm.
and he's he does such an interesting job of capturing a feeling of just general unease and just something uncanny about his use of framing and the perspective that he uses with the camera, as well as the soundtracks are always great at feeding into the emotions of the narrative that he wants to tell, but also not trying to inform it and like take over a scene. It just helps to kind of keep you in the moment. And I love how he has begun to work with Emma Stone so much, because she's fantastic in this movie. Jesse Plemons, I think this he has been on kind of a big tear on like in popular movies. I feel like with
Totally.
Civil War and Now Kinds of Kindness. I feel like
The
2024
Scorsese
was
one, which I can't
yeah,
remember the
yeah.
title of it.
Irishman and Killers of the Flower
Yeah,
Moon.
yeah.
He's been everywhere. He's a great actor.
Hmm.
But I think it was a great kind of cast of main actors that worked on all three of these kind of weird short stories, and it came along into it's a weird journey, and the themes are very strange and abstract and like harsh and jarring, as Yorgos kind of likes to do.
Hmm.
It's very funny, in that kind of black humor way, where it's just like, man, this is fucking weird. This is fucked up. What are we watching? Some of his weirder moments, I
Okay.
guess, in a while, definitely come through in this movie.
Weirder than Poor
Um,
Things.
I'd say some
Interesting.
of these stories are fucking weird, um, but they all kind of serve to get at these like weird abstract ways of looking at like kindness, love, and affection, and belonging, and it's done it at exploring those kind of themes through the most like weird and twisted, and uncanny ways that you can. So definitely an enjoyable movie. I would say if you don't like any of Yorgos Lanthimos stuff, then I would not check it out, because
Sure.
it is very much him hamming it up and like being as like I feel like he's towing the line at some points where you're just like, okay, this is very like it's bleak and just obtuse to a point where it's like we could have. I get the point, but sometimes it gets a little lost in the sauce, I think. But overall, I would recommend this movie.
All right, cool. Yeah, I want to check it out. I've been, I guess, sort of waiting on it.
Yeah, I don't think it's anywhere near as good as Poor Things, just because I mean I think Poor Things is a
Sure.
fantastic movie,
Hmm.
one of the best of the year.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and this is a good movie, but I definitely think it's more of it feels like more of a passion project, just something that he kind of whipped together and was able
Hmm.
to kind of get a good cast and crew together to just film these kind of short movies, kind of put them all together into a larger project, and it kind of shows.
Yeah. Yeah, because it makes sense that it would be based on that, and also I just think it was marketed way less than Poor Things. That like
Hmm.
makes it like way less of a popular
For
thing
sure.
than when
Yeah.
that released and everybody was talking about it. It's a little bit more low key, but so worth checking out, I suppose. And then for me, uh, next I saw Crank High Voltage, which is the second Crank movie. There's two of these things, and they
Right.
star our favorite British bald man, Jason Statham, as
The one and only.
action hero man. And honestly, I recommend both these movies, Crank and Crank High Voltage, because they're very similar in like just themes, and they just feel very consistent with one another. Where it's just this super over the top action movie where it's the first one is it's this dude and he's been poisoned and he needs to keep his heart rate up or else he'll die from the poison. So he needs to like go out and find the man who did it and I guess kill him and find the antidote or whatever. And along the way he like bumps into old enemies and rivals. I forget exactly what he is. He's like a hitman or some shit. I don't know. But it features a good cast of funny characters. And in the second one, pretty much all of them make a return. And I feel like there was a decent amount of passion poured into this one. It rehashes sort of some of the ideas of the first one. But like it also just sort of amps up. I mean, it's high voltage. It's, you know, it's amped up a little bit. And I think this one is honestly slightly funnier. I'm not sure if the action is necessarily that much better, but I think it is directed by two stunt dudes. Yeah, and it's definitely very clear while watching it. It's very like the camera's just constantly like following him in the action scenes when he's running and jumping around and doing shit like that. And they're both good times. They're not like excellent cinema. I'm gonna be thinking about this for eons, and it changed my life. It's not shit like that, and it's not trying to be that. It's not pretending to be that. They're just really well made and fun and funny action movies, and I recommend both of them. So yeah,
I'll have to check them out then.
totally.
All right. As I continued along in my exploration of the musical genre of films, I had to check out one of the most talked about movies, most talked about musicals come out in a long time, and of course, I'm talking about Joker 2.
Ooh, I saw this one also, and I was gonna bring it up. So I guess this is the first time where we have like a joint, I don't know, thing that we saw during this period of time, which is odd because you would think that it would have happened sooner, but I don't know.
Yeah, this is the first time, and we can talk about it as a discussion at this point.
Oh yeah,
because
what a banger.
I will just say I didn't love the film at all.
Oh.
I think the first one was interesting. It was a good kind of replica of better movies in a DC universe, and using characters that we're all familiar
technically
with.
It's not really a part of the, it's not part of the DC movie universe, but you're right about like it's comic book characters from the DC movies, comics. I mean,
yes, and
there's a good different take on the superhero shits where it's not all about the action and the fighting of good guy versus bad guy. It's an exploration, a character study, if I were to be that generous, about a super villain, in what was, I think, trying to be sort of a realistic way, a little bit, the first one, which it was decent.
And you'd think if you had a success on movie one, I don't know, you'd expect either them to cash it in and do the same thing over, or maybe like try something like new but safe. It's a large media franchise at this point, and if you got, I think Joker 2 or Joker 1 was a pretty large box office success.
Oh yeah, it was like one of the maybe the biggest or second biggest or some shit of that year of 2018 or something.
I think so. You'd expect a sequel to do anything but what
2019
ended up occurring, because this second movie is a musical, as well as a courtroom kind of drama, as well as a romance, as well as a kind of madhouse prison drama, a la like a Green Mile, Flow to the Cuckoo's Nest, or whatever, Shawshank. Yeah, it's trying to do all of that, and I'd say it fails at
Every pillar
every
of
aspect.
that.
Yeah, every aspect. So not a great thing to hear, but I think the most unnerving part for me about this movie was the musical aspect, just because of how straight they played it. Like they
Yeah.
there was no sauce to any of the like really any of the music scenes. The
No, it
wildest
felt
set piece
very
they had.
uninspired. Like when I think like
No.
music themes, I think or like music scenes of like
Hmm.
musicals, I think of like the entire environment just like sort of breaking apart, and
Yes.
we're in like this like sort of fantasy made
Exactly.
up thing.
Exactly.
It's like not and like I guess that's sort of the perfect thing with the Joker because I think he's imagining most of these scenes like they're not literally
Right.
happening. So it's like
Yes.
why
It very
not
much
just
seems like
like
that.
should they go all out with that
Why
idea?
wouldn't they?
And I guess
Yeah.
it's just the dude directing it, Todd Phillips, is
He,
I don't know why he wanted a musical because
yeah.
he
If it's
knowing the
it's a,
stuff he directed in the past, it doesn't really make any sense.
yeah. Do you think it's like a choice on his part to be like,
I
I
think it
want to keep this
is.
grounded and realistic. I don't want it to be so crazy like they do in all those other musicals.
I think he
You
was
know, the
given
part that everyone
pretty
loves.
solid control over this one for whatever
Yeah.
reason because the first one was a pretty big success. So
Yeah.
I think they
So they
just sort
trusted
of
him to
yeah.
do right by them, and I think he kind of stabbed him in the back, especially because of how this was received with its original audience,
Mhm.
where the people who loved the first one, perhaps too much so, ended up
Right,
hating
for
this
the
one
wrong
because
reasons
it
maybe.
essentially, yeah, it's very much a film at odds with its predecessor.
Yeah. Which I don't mind that because I've read
It's an interesting thing,
Dune
right?
and then I've
Yeah.
read Dune Messiah.
Dune Messiah.
And like
Yes,
I've seen it work
I
before,
understand.
but
Yeah.
it's a very difficult thing to do to set up like here's the protagonist, you must be invested
Mhm.
in them and you must love them. And then here's sort of we're breaking apart what they are and what they mean to the world
Mhm.
and stuff like that. And it's like don't look up to the Joker because he's actually a bad guy, guys. Just
Yeah,
a
it's like,
reminder.
wow.
And that's sort of what I guess this movie is, and especially by the ending that they
But
give it. And yeah, like the courtroom drama musical aspect to it is I'm optimistic for just ideas in general for these sorts of things. But I think with who was at the helm of it, along with doing it with this existing comic book character, like if it was maybe an original sort of story separated from the first Joker film, I think it could have maybe been more successful, and also if it had better music and
yeah.
musical scenes and shit like that. But I could see a version of this working where it succeeds on that. Like maybe early on in the film they try to build up like they're sort of defending him for being crazy and weird and stuff, and then by the end of it, that sort of is nah. Maybe we shouldn't promote this in society or whatever. And I could see that sort of message working in maybe something like that. Obviously, that wasn't the version we were given, though. It was just
No,
kind of
it's
like
not.
this. Oh, it's so bad.
It's
And
very
yeah, the
fragmented.
romance is very half-assed because it's
Yeah,
just
oh,
sort of
so
squeezed
much
in
so.
there, even though like
I
it's
actually
so
laughed when
long.
she just left at the end. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
That's what we're doing? When he confesses. And oh my goodness. It's a strange movie.
Yeah, and the courtroom
Yeah.
drama, it's like it's one of the worst. Like courtroom dramas are so interesting. Like when I've seen them
There's so yeah,
before,
because they
there's
are
so many things you
somewhat
could do with it.
regimented. There is like a schematic that you can follow with a courtroom drama. The the music aspect of this film is so bad for me that it puts off every other aspect just because of how straight they try and play it.
Yeah, it's
Where
overwhelmingly like in your face
it's
about it
it's
because
just
I
like
mean it's
instead of
advertising
like
itself as that, and it's
yeah,
Lady Gaga who's a music lady person who also acts sometimes, and she's singing in this, and it's just shit. Like if you
hmm
you could just go watch one of her music videos, and it's literally the greatest thing ever compared to whatever this shit is.
yeah. I mean, she was way better in The Star Is Born. They didn't give her much to work with at all. Harleen Quinzel, I guess, played a very, very small role in this movie, which is weird because she's like, she's the second most important character.
In
Oh,
theory,
it's such a weird movie because it is so much so focused on Joaquin Phoenix. And
sure.
I do think he still does a good job. He's a good actor. They're all doing the work. It's just the rest of the movie does not pick up the slack because it's not forgiving for these actors. The music is unforgiving because they don't have a lot to work with choreography wise or set wise. Is like they're just playing it straight as if you're just like they're basically they could be talking, but instead they're singing at each other.
And that's like the
It's like,
biggest
why are
thing
we
is
not-
like you could like okay, so the music is shit, but like at least make it look visually interesting, right? Like you change around the set pieces and stuff when he's singing, like he's imagining shit anyways. It doesn't have to be in the same dreary green ass dark prison room for the 100th time. It could be something, something else. Like it's hard to imagine, I guess, what Joker's vision of that would even be. So he just said, forget it.
Yeah.
It's going to be whatever.
The thing that musicals allow for is like through the song lyrics and like the rhythm and the choreography, you can have interesting film devices to explore that, whether it be through the set or how someone delivers a line or how the dancers can interact with each other. But if you just play it as a straight scene where essentially you're just alternating singing instead of talking, it serves none of those strengths of a musical and only serves to take you out of the experience of the rest of the film. It really hinders the rest of the movie. I would be interested to see what this movie would be if you took out the musical aspect, just because
True.
it is so kind of unnerving. But the rest of the I guess it's trying to be. It tries to be as a device to symbolize him kind of falling apart and his delusions. But yeah, as we said at the beginning, they just don't commit to it, and instead it comes off as weird and unnerving and uncanny, and it just kind of halts the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like that idea is so out there. Courtroom musical romance drama featuring the comic book legend the Joker. It's such an out there idea, and it feels so half-assed. Or even less than that. It feels like quarter-assed.
It feels so bland. It's so bland for how weird the ideas are.
Yeah, and it's so long and so boring.
Yeah.
Throughout, there's like
there's
not a single exciting moment where I was perking my head up like, oh, a thing is happening that I'm interested in. That never happened once in this 2 hour 20 minutes.
Yeah,
of runtime.
I'll say the redeeming aspects of this movie are the actual like cinematography and the lighting, and the acting. I'd say are probably the things that keep it above like a bottom of the barrel movie.
Sure. Yeah, it's not like
because
literally the worst thing ever. Like it has some you said, it's decently shot.
It is it's well shot. That like all of the actors are doing it well. Like they're
I wouldn't call any of them bad.
no, they're working well with the material that they're given. It's a shame that the rest of the movie does not do anything to support that.
Yep. We're pretty much on the same page there, I guess. And now the audience is as well, because they're just, taking mental notes of all their opinions they need to borrow from us.
Indeed. And kind of in the same vein of musicals, after I watched this one, I did hear there was another one coming out that everyone has been talking about. The very new Wicked with Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo. And I checked it out because I knew it'd be the talk of the town. And I think it is enjoyable, especially compared to the musical that we just watched.
Sure.
In comparison, this is leagues and leagues better as a musical. Now, as a film, I think it was good. I don't know if I would say it was fantastic. It is always weird when they set up a movie as a part one. I think that's always going to be...
Yeah. It wasn't really in the marketing, right? It's in the credits or something. Does that appear? Or it's like end of part one? Or does it say that at the beginning? Or
it does say at the beginning. When the title card drops, that says part one.
Interesting.
But none of the
Yeah, but you don't know that until you're in the
advertisements.
theater.
Yeah,
So you think you're sort
you're
of
in
getting
the
the full
seats.
experience. And
Yeah.
it's
Yep.
yeah.
But I think the songs obviously are tried and true. If they worked on Broadway, then they're going to work on the big screen.
Yeah.
And I think all of the performances are pretty good throughout. I'd say the weakest ones are Michelle Yeoh and Jeff Goldblum, but that's understandable. They are not known for being singers.
That's true.
But I think the big question was Ariana Grande, seeing how she would return to kind of the cameras and being an actress. And she did great. I thought she was the funniest element of the movie as Glinda. And it very gave me Ken vibes. She serves that kind of comedic role where it's like a foil to the main character, but also kind of comic relief. I think the movie is very safe, despite how like interesting and magical Oz is often depicted to be. I thought that this was a little constrained and not as interesting as it could have been. I think some of the set pieces for like some of the music, kind of action and choreography, for some of the music scenes were good and interesting, but some of them were also just, I thought, by the books as a musical could be. I still haven't watched a ton of them, but I think
You're getting there. You're in the grind right now. You're done with James Bond.
exactly.
You're onto the just musical
The
after
musicals
musical.
now. Yep. And I think this was a better than average movie. I think the performances were all pretty good across the board. The story is like pretty predictable. I've never honestly consumed any Wizard of Oz media before this.
Ever? Like not even the original movie?
Like never.
I think we had talked about this in
Yeah.
person recently. Yeah.
Because recently I have like just these past few days I've been
Right.
watching a bunch of Oz. Like I
Yeah.
just watched the original Wizard of Oz, and I watched the Sam Raimi Wizard of Oz one that
Is that
came
the
out with
James
James
Franco
Franco. Yes. Yeah, and
Hell yeah.
I could, yeah, those were interesting. So now I'm kind of the Wicked 2024 was the first introduction into this world. Besides, I guess, like,
That's interesting.
I don't know, an element like a middle school play. I think my sister probably was in.
Oh, okay.
Of the original Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
But Wicked, I think, was a good introduction. It's a weird world, but I think it was a fun enough story. It's very CGI heavy, obviously, as any like big magical blockbuster is going to be. But I think the set design and the costumes design was all pretty good. And I don't know if I'm gonna be waiting with bated breath for the second one when it eventually comes out
Yeah.
in 2 years or 3 years. I don't know.
They
how
haven't
long it'll
announced
take.
it. It's not like a next year scenario. It's like
Yeah,
are they still making that the second one, or did they film them both sort of?
I have no idea
I assume that-
because
I
no
guess
one
it's a
knew.
separate thing, 'cause they're both
No one knew it was part one until
right.
recently.
Yeah, that's true.
So
They probably
I don't
filmed
know if
most
they
of
were
it
just
and they
like,
got headway on the.
Yeah.
They're gonna do a second one because the first it's still pretty long for part one,
it is long.
160
Yeah,
minutes.
yeah, over 2.5 hours. It was definitely a long movie. And I don't think the pacing suffered for that. I think it was relatively well paced. It didn't feel that long. But I also am confused why they're trying to break it up into part one and part two. Is it like, are they trying to replicate what Dune did? But like, wasn't Dune marketed as like a part one even before?
Yeah. Oh,
Whereas
yeah.
this one
Yeah,
wasn't.
that was. It
So
was.
this
Yeah.
is like
This is like the first one
time.
I've seen where it's.
I guess Spider-Verse kind of did that. Spider-Verse 2, where you didn't realize it was going
that's
to be
true.
like
Yeah,
a cliffhanger.
It did it first, I guess.
So that was one, but I feel like that kind of I don't know if it's like a marketing ploy or like
I think it
what
is
we would
because
call this.
people would complain
Yeah.
all about it. Like if you see the
Yeah.
trailers and it's like Wicked Part 1, they'd be like, "Oh fuck that! Why are we doing all these goddamn things?" But when you're just
Yeah.
showing it to the people in the theaters who are invested in the thing anyways, it's kind of like they'll complain about it slightly, but it's less it's more muted. I feel like.
It's a weird thing. But yeah, I think it was a solid enough movie. After this, I immediately watched The Wizard of Oz, the original, which I did like better. And it's hard to judge, as we kind of discussed, it's hard to judge old movies like that in like
No,
the same
I
light,
super feel that
just
with
because
that one
it's
specifically.
it's so incredibly different.
Yeah.
It's like one of the original like cinematic pillar stones.
Yeah,
Is
it's
the
a
original
must
Wizard
see.
of Oz. So like
Totally.
everyone needs to see it.
And then watch
it is
the
very
Emp
good and
Lemon
impressive.
video about the going on in the behind the scenes.
Yes.
I think he did that one.
That snow, that wonderful asbestos snow. Love to see that.
100 billion degrees indoors. But yeah, is your journey to Oz over? Because there's more movies left.
I know there are.
There's what is it? There's Return to Oz, and
Yeah,
also apparently
yeah.
there's this Journey Back to Oz, which is different. I don't know what the fuck. If they tell the same story of, because they Journey Back to Oz, and then there's Return to Oz. It seem like the
It's-
same thing, but I guess they're different.
Yeah, I don't know how fully bought in I am with this franchise as a franchise.
I need to
It
watch all the
seems-
Wizard of Oz adaptation
Yeah.
movie things. So I guess it's probably a series of books, right? Like maybe there's a
think it's
couple
just-
different children's books. It's just one, and it's just
thought it
is
was
the
just
main
one,
is the
and
main
then-
Wizard of Oz like movie story. Is that just part one of the book? And then Wicked is like essentially fan fiction of that.
It was like a theater adaptation, I think.
Yeah.
So I could not tell you. I have very little knowledge on
Not an expert
the Wizard
on
of Oz
Oz.
franchise in general. I'll have to do my research. And
But yeah, that's another advantage that Wicked has over Joker Folie à Deux, which is that it was a Broadway play for,
yeah,
I mean, close to 20 years or over that now. I guess over
Yeah.
that. Like I remember even in grade school, just like walking around, like in the music room, there was like a poster of it or some shit. And I think
yep.
other kids in our classes had discussed seeing it or something. I was not one of those people. But anyways.
It's a classic kind of
Yeah.
modern
And
contemporary.
it makes sense that eventually it's going to get a film
Theater piece.
adaptation out of it. I guess I'm sort of surprised it took this long.
Yeah. I wonder when
Knowing other ones.
we're gonna get a fucking Hamilton movie. It's
Yeah.
gonna happen. It's gotta be.
Exactly. It'll happen. Oh, it'll happen. Believe it.
The only question is how soon.
In the next 10 years, I bet.
Mhm.
All right, yeah. Well, since we already talked about the Joker Folie à Deux, I only got one more left. I don't know how many you have.
That took me to the end
Oh, okay.
of my
Perfect. then.
viewing journey.
So yeah, I checked out this one called Notting Hill, which is a movie of movies from 1999. What an era! And it's about this. I guess it's a romance. You could call it. Why not? That's what it is. Drama of this. It's Hugh Grant, sort of this beautiful bloke, and he's just sort of this average dude in this running a bookstore or working for it or whatever, and he meets this beautiful, sexy actress lady, and they I guess sort of fall in love a little bit slightly.
There's a
and it's-
spark.
Yeah, there's a spark, you could say. And yeah, I mean, you've seen it. It feels like a billion trillion films I've seen before, and that's not necessarily the movie's fault. I think it actually was pretty influential in the rom-com genre, sphere, area, region, place. Just in terms of all the tropes and cliches and shit. And I was really hopeful for this one, especially since like there's like 3 different places I thought it was gonna end, and there was one place particularly where it would have been absolutely perfect to end, like knowing where other films would have taken it from there. and I was like, please don't do that. Please just end it here, and it'll be so perfect, and it'll stick out, and it'll be something really interesting to write home about. But in the end, they just sort of do the same thing that all these other rom-com things do, which I won't say for spoilers. But if you're at all familiar with these things, you can imagine like characters falling in and out of, you know, relationships or whatever. You could probably conclude what happens at the end of these types of things. And yeah, I guess I don't need to say much more than that. It's not a bad version of this type of film at all. It's maybe one of the better ones. I still don't enjoy it though.
It is
For
very
most of them,
highly
I'm
regarded.
like, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like one of my mom's favorite rom-coms.
Yeah, okay.
So
Wow.
I watched it a while back.
You were forced to.
And yeah, I remember like as you said, rom-coms are very tropey. You know what you're getting into. So there are, I feel like, fewer rom-coms that stick out to me in particular, for having like being like a movie that I myself would enjoy. I don't often love how tropey and how kind of point A, meet cute, point B, relationship,
Yeah.
point C, unhappy, and usually addendum, they break up, and then part D, they're back together and they're in love forever.
Exactly. And that's where it ends. It's like, will you marry me? Yeah. Okay. Movie end.
Yeah.
Once that's secured, because it's like, oh, is there nothing left to show of anything?
Yeah.
Like, okay.
There are
That's when
definitely
life
some
ends, I
movies
guess.
that do it better. I'd say more recently, When Harry Met Sally was one that I watched that stuck out with me.
That's a much better one.
Yeah.
That's probably, dare I say, the best one, because that's one I do enjoy.
It's probably
I don't know,
my favorite that I've watched up until now.
Yeah, I don't know what other, like, off the top of my head in the genre. I can't think. of any
As we're
better
coming
than that
to
one.
the Christmas season, I know everyone loves what is it, the British one with
Love
everyone
Actually.
from Britain. Love Actually. It's just the
That one's
most
not
British film of all time.
That one's so
and people also love that one as much as they love Notting Hill. And I
Which
agree.
makes sense,
I
because
think
they are in that same sphere.
they're very
Shits.
similar.
Don't they both
but yeah.
also have Hugh Grant in it? I think he's in both. of
Yes.
those.
Yep. Yeah. But the roles are basically inverted, where he is the prime minister
he's
in
the-
Love Actually. So he's
yeah.
like he's the famous
the
one.
pinnacle dude, and
Yeah.
he's meeting like an average sort of normal
Yeah,
girl.
exactly.
Or
But
supposedly,
his
that's what she's supposed to
secretary,
be.
yeah,
It's solid.
yeah. That
That's right.
Love Actually, yeah. I do not get
That's
the
a
hype
film.
around that movie, but
I understand. I
really,
understand it. I understand it. I'm not. I don't.
it's tradition for some people, which I get, but like I don't know why it's that movie.
I think it makes sense because it's a lot of big names, a
It
lot
is a
of
lot of big
attractive
names.
people in that thing, and it's
Yeah.
like it's just an all-encompassing. Like, here's a bunch of random fucking love shits.
Yeah.
You'll enjoy one of them, maybe, probably, because there's like 40 of them. Why not? You'll be
Yeah,
invested.
they're all
in one
doing
of them.
very different things, but all similar enough
Yeah.
to be enjoyed.
There's
by
that, and then
everyone.
there's also Valentine's Day, which is like the same shit, but just on
Yeah.
Valentine's Day, and it's American. And there's also another one, I think, New Year's Eve, which I haven't seen yet. Because every year I like come back to that, I'm like, oh, I missed the cutoff period where I should watch that, which is, you know, within a week of New Year's Eve or something like that. Because those seasonal shits, you can't watch that in the opposite time of the year, or maybe you can. Maybe I'll do that at some point.
Maybe,
Or
yeah.
the Christmas movies, just check it out in March or something like.
It's like, why
I'm
not?
doing this
I'm
now.
feeling it.
All right. But yeah, that I guess takes us to the end of the movie section, and onto TV, which I have two things. Do you have anything for this section?
I have two things,
Ooh.
indeed. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll start us off here with one that I had mentioned previously that I've been continuing, which is Lost. And I last time I don't think I even really described what the show even is. I mean, people probably know. It's just like there's this plane that crashes onto this island, and they have no ways to communicate with sort of the outside world, and they believe that, you know, the way in which the plane changes trajectory in the flight plan, they like fuck off to like some other random island not in the like directed schedule thing, so they assume that people looking for them won't be able to find them and stuff like that. And it's just I think 50 or so people sort of stranded on this island together, and drama ensues. And I thought it was going to be a lot more like emphasis on survival sort of tactics and shit like that, with some drama mixed in, where it's like, all right, we need to, here's how to like make a fire from scratch. Here's how to make a like a settlement tent thing. Here's how to spot which mushrooms are poisonous or not poisonous, like, and that stuff like mixed in with drama. When it's not really about that. It's each episode, at least in season 1 and seasons 2 and 3 also. It's usually they focus in on sort of one character, and they sort of delve into the backstory of like, here's who they were before getting on the island. Here's how they sort of got onto the plane. And it's that mixed in with them in the present. And even though the episode is sort of more focused in on them, it still shows off, because it's pretty much an ensemble type of thing. I mean, there's still like a main character
people.
or two. Yeah, there's like 20
Yes.
main characters essentially.
Okay.
That you sort of learn about sort of slowly over time. And yeah, that's how it's sort of set up, and it's really quite great so far. And it's a lot less on that survival type of shit. I mean, there's some early on where they're like, we're running out of food and water, we need to find ways to do that or whatever. But it surprisingly takes a much more sort of supernatural aspect to it, where there's weird things happening on this island that are sort of unexplained,
Okay.
and it's raising a bunch of questions that some of them so far have been sort of answered, but maybe an equal amount have been raised. And if I had to guess for the ending, is maybe because like we said last time, I think the consensus is people don't like the ending of it,
Yes.
or whatever. Like if I had to guess right now, because I'm in season 4, sort of early on into that, out of 6 seasons, so I'm slightly most of the way through it, I think. Like if I had to guess what people had problems with, it would probably be this sort of buildup of all of these things, and it just sort of all crumbles down, because how can you even as an author find the shit to like justify every little thing? It is difficult, especially if there's multiple showrunners or show writers over such a long period of time. It's just easy for shit to stack up so high, and then it's like, well, we gotta disassemble it in a slow, orderly
They
fashion,
lost the
or
plot.
it's just everything, yeah. Which that hasn't happened so far, but I can in season 4 sort of see it falling apart a little bit, where it's still not bad at all. It's still very good television. It's just each sort of season in general has been a sort of like very, very slight decline in quality, I think. Because yeah, season 1 is very solid at setting everything up. It's obviously very slow, but like even so, like within each episode, there's shit that's happening that's interesting and dramatic, and usually the endings, especially for season 1, are like surprising shits are happening. And season 1 ends on a really, really strong note, with multiple good emotional payoffs and fucking cliffhangers, and it's like the perfect ending to like the first season of television. It's just so good.
Keeps you hooked.
And season 2 picks up, and the first 3 episodes are so wacky. Like there had to have been a better way to structure the, like, because they're basically showing, here's an event that happens, here's a buildup of it from this person's perspective.
Okay.
Here's the event again, and here's the buildup of it from, and I see what they're going for, but there had to have been a better way of like doing it or displaying that. But from that point on, it's up from there, and it's season 2 and 3 are still quite good, and I'm on 4 now, and I'm still really enjoying the show. And I'm very interested in seeing where it goes and how it falls, assuming that it does. Or who knows, maybe people were just super mad about random shit when it's 10 years or 6 years of your life built up over time, hyping it up in your head. But for me, a guy coming into it all fresh and new, maybe it's completely fine. I guess we'll see.
Maybe.
I'm not holding my hopes in any category. I'm just here and open to either possibility.
Just along for the ride.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm still definitely enjoying it for now, even if it's had a very slight decline over time. So yeah,
That's good.
hmm
It's a show that I feel like
yeah,
was so big in the popular conscious and then disappeared overnight that like I have to check it out eventually just to figure
I
out
think you should watch it.
what was it all about.
It is honestly,
and
really
now
good
that
television. Yeah,
now that you have started watching it and say that it's great TV
it
for
pops off totally.
a while, I'll definitely have to check it out. On my end, I ended up watching the new season of Arcane.
Oh, I did also. This is our second one of
Wow.
Shit's
Okay.
Duplicated. I also watched this.
All right.
And I rewatched
Well
the
then.
first season, which is rare
You did.
because
Yeah.
usually I just sort of jump in balls deep, like
That is what I did.
because usually when there are these shows that are coming out maybe one season per year or even every other year for like these animes
Mm-hmm.
or even longer than that, I just sort of jump into the new season without rewatching them within like
Right.
close proximity, and I'm just sort of lost initially, like, oh, who is this character? And I'm like sort of like
Yeah, I don't remember you. Who, what
reassigning, like,
happened.
oh, that's right, this
Yeah.
person I think did this thing, and this character
That was
maybe
how it
did
was
this
for
thing.
me.
Yeah,
For sure.
Yeah.
I should have rewatched the first season.
because rewatching the first season was like, it's so good.
It
It's,
does lead
it's
straight
so
into
good.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The first season is like perfection in almost literally every sense, from like the animation, the voice acting,
Yeah.
just the characters, the world building, like
First season is
just
fantastic.
cause and effect
Yeah.
sequence of events in general, and it felt like very planned out. Like, here's this event that we're setting up now, and it'll lead to this character doing this thing. And now that we've established this, we're gonna show this character's backstory, and like everything like that. It felt so like coordinated, just as a story. Like,
Yeah. Without a doubt.
it was awesome. And I think this second season is a bit of a drop off. It's not bad at all.
I would
I
agree.
think it's still very good, but yeah, it's a little bit more all over the place and a little cluttered and a little like slightly too quick of pacing, because again, it's 9 episodes, and the first season was 9 episodes also, but the first season was condensed and packed, but like paced pretty perfectly. And in this, they're trying to explore way more things, to the point where some of the episodes are like very like can not carry over super heavily into the other ones necessarily. Like,
Yes.
they're more like compact within the same episode, which they do find ways of bringing even those sort of moments back into later episodes sometimes. I guess I'm talking about the Echo episode mostly.
Which is a great one.
It's a great
Yeah.
episode. It's just
Yeah.
almost
It
out of
does
nowhere.
feel
I'm
very-
like, what the
yeah,
fuck?
exactly.
This is happening now? Like, it's not a
Yeah.
bad version of this alternate universe type
Right.
of thing. Like, I could see it working in this. I guess I did see it work in it
Mm-hmm.
mostly. It's just a little bit out there.
It does take you out of the, like, especially because I believe that was the
Yeah.
first episode in the second or the last act.
Yeah,
So I
it was
guess
like episode
it works if
7,
you're
I
like,
guess.
you wait a week.
It literally takes
and
you
you're
out
like,
of the
what
universe.
is
It's
what is
like,
going to happen?
Oh,
Yeah.
and then you go back to episode 8. It's like, oh, okay, we were here. I forgot
Yeah,
all about that.
exactly.
Because Netflix did this thing for this season. I forget if they did it for season 1, where they did it in 3 episode chunks
Right.
weekly
Mm-hmm.
rather than just once per week, which is an interesting way of doing things. I'm not sure if that's better than once per week. It's, I think, still maybe better than releasing it all at
Binging
once.
it, yeah.
Maybe. I don't know.
I think it worked.
Mm-hmm.
I think they could have done it weekly, and it would be maybe even bigger.
Probably. Just to draw
But
it out.
I think
maybe.
I think this was good as a hybrid, especially because
Mm-hmm.
I think they did do the same thing with the first season.
Okay.
Because the first season is also structured into those kind of
And the
3 episode chunks,
Exactly.
and then you kind of get like a larger climactic moment, and then you continue on with the rest of the season.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think the first season is, like you said, pretty fantastic. Just great writing, great characters, really interesting worlds, which is crazy to say about the League of Legends
know.
universe.
I hate that video
Never
game.
thought I would ever say
be invested in
anything
anything
positive about
related
it.
to it. Yeah.
Yeah. But 2, I agree, is probably worse overall. I think the animation is even better, which is fucking insane.
I know, it's so
How did they even, like, what? It's just the best animated thing I think I've
the best
seen.
animated show of the year, of the decade, of, you know, whatever.
Maybe best animated show in a long time. Yeah. I think it. I still love all the characters. I think I think the final act had the largest problems, pacing wise. Although I think I understand where all the characters ended up and why they made decisions they made is all understandable.
There's some
I
pretty
just
out
wish
there
we had
shit
more
in it.
times.
Yeah.
Yeah. It does get very weird, specifically with like Victor. I think he had the strangest arc.
He starts to become Jesus, and then he becomes like the Antichrist or something.
Yeah,
Like, I don't know.
just like very quickly over like one episode, not even like 30 minutes.
And they try to weave in that scientist assistant lady who was in the first one back into like her existing and shit. And it's I sort of admire stuff like this because it's like they're not forgetting about like these random ideas that they have. Like they're still like weaving them in. It's just like not all properly coming together type of thing.
Yeah.
It's maybe better than it not existing to begin with. Or like if they had like the
I think
scientist
so.
lady existing in season 1 and she blew up or whatever. Oops, spoilers.
Right.
But
And
like
you
she's not an
never
established character.
mention her
And
again.
it would be like, okay, fine, whatever. I don't even remember or I'm thinking about that. But then like she you know, the idea or whatever of her exists within this one, and you know, shit happens because of it slightly. You know, it's not the greatest thing ever, but it's okay. You remembered, and you're still sort of utilizing this idea to a degree.
I think I don't know. How did you feel about the music videos at like the beginning of every
that was
episode?
interesting to me because you already have this intro, which is this for me. It was
title
annoying because
card,
it was the same. It was the same song as the first season, which I
Yeah.
guess I'm sort of
I
used
kind
to.
of expected something
Yeah,
else.
I'm used to like the anime thing where every season you get a new opening.
Yeah. I guess it was because it was always kind of set up as like it was going to be 2 seasons, and they kind of worked on
But
them at the same
thing
time.
is,
maybe.
did you ever watch Hunter x Hunter or did you just read it?
I watched and read.
Okay, so yeah, there's the thing in that where it's the same like overall like 3.5 full song or whatever.
Yeah.
Is usually what they do is they make one of those and then they condense a 1.5 minute version for the anime, and that's the version that we see in the show. And Hunter x Hunter does this thing where it has 2 of them, where it's the version 1 is like the first verse and the first chorus, and then version 2 is the second version and the second chorus of the full song. And each season of Hunter x Hunter flips between those 2. So it's the same song that we're hearing, but it's a different part of that full song experience. And this Imagine Dragons song, I mean, is that not a full like 3.5
It's just the
whatever
same
minute
one.
song?
Yeah.
Like, is it? Do they have like a different second verse or something for that one? Because they could have done that, and that would have been like I would have been completely okay and fine with that. But it is just that same.
I think it's just the same song.
The misery,
Just straight,
whatever
yeah.
thing.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's slightly annoying, but you have that on top of these. Yeah, these. I mean, just like use one or the
2-minute
other.
long music videos.
Just
at
like
the very
use one or the
beginning of
other.
every
Do the
episode,
Imagine
yeah.
Dragons thing again, and that's fine. Whatever. Or do these unique. Every episode does its own sort of different thing. Like you're doing that anyways, so why it was confusing.
And I think that
for
worked
me.
so much better.
Yeah.
I definitely enjoyed. I didn't enjoy having them kind of like back to back. It wasn't always back to back.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
oftentimes
Sometimes one of
they
them
were.
occurred before the other, and then in a different episode
Yeah.
they were flipped. It was weird.
And so essentially, like, if you're fine with just like skipping through the intro, that's like whatever. Because I'd say I appreciated like the music videos more than I would have expected, just because the animation is so good.
Yeah.
And it's usually like a bit of a they take more liberties with the animation in those kind of music video introduction, for lack of a better term. And it does serve as like a very quick kind of slideshow of the setup.
Yeah,
like
it's like here's
what
shit this
would be
character was doing.
what would be
right before right
exposition
now, maybe.
and take a long time is instead
It's essentially
condensed
like a
into a
montage
purely
type of
visual
thing,
form. It's a montage.
And like I'm cool with those because like League of Legends has done these types of music videos before.
exactly.
It's like promotional things, and I've enjoyed those. Again, as this person who is I don't want to play the game. I don't want to be into
Very
it. But
anti League of Legends.
I am into the other random stuff they make, and that includes that they're like promotional music video things, which I don't know if you've checked those out at all. But like, there's the
I have not.
I forget if it's KDA.
Oh yeah,
KDA, whatever this
yeah,
shit's
yeah.
called. It's like a virtual band sort of
Yeah,
thing.
the girl
Of
group,
the characters,
K-pop group, whatever.
those music videos aren't bad, and I assume they're building off of that. I assume it's the same studio, maybe group of people, maybe I don't know. I have no idea.
Could
But
be.
the quality is still there along with those. There might have been one or two that I was maybe off put by slightly by the how the song sounded. I don't really remember though. I think overall I enjoyed those for what they were. I just remember being confused about, okay, why do we have both of these? Why do we need two musical intros for one episode of, it was just off putting to me slightly.
Riot has money, and they are going to spend
They are spending
They are
it.
gonna spend it on every single music artist you could think of worldwide,
Yeah.
because they are Mr. Worldwide.
Where they're-
They are putting in the work to be recognized around the world through having a bunch of international artists
Yeah.
and voice actors.
Did
and
you recognize
animations,
like the
obviously.
other groups for the songs?
I
these episodes?
recognized a few of their names. I don't listen to many of the artists that they
They're
contracted.
shit. Don't listen to them.
Yeah.
Peter doesn't listen to them. Don't fuck with them either. We don't do that here.
I mean, I think they had like Stromae, which is
Yeah,
like
yeah.
one of the most famous French,
Okay.
kind of hip hop artists. I get hip hop pop artists.
There was one in French. I remember that.
Yeah,
At least one.
but I don't know if any of the music really stood out to me, but I'd say the animation kind of carries so heavily, and the writing is still great. They had a $250 million budget, and they used it about as well as I could ever expect,
Yeah.
considering how much movies are costing nowadays, where 250 million is like damn near cheap. What the hell? So, and they are
Yeah, and
they're not
this is like
matching
film
the
quality
quality that
animation across
yeah
9 40-minute episodes. Or the last episode's like an hour, isn't it? Or something. Is
Yeah.
it slightly longer?
yeah I think so.
Okay.
No, it's a very solid series.
Yeah, man.
A bit of a step down from one, but still easy recommendation, easy worthwhile. Really, really cool.
Yeah, the fact that it's a step down isn't like that big a deal because again, the first season is so close to perfection. It's
Yeah.
it's super difficult to match that at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm pretty much right there with you on this one.
All right.
Enjoyed
If that
it.
was your second
Yeah, those
show
were
that
both
you
of
watched,
mine. Exactly.
I'll finish up speaking on HBO's The Penguin,
Oh yeah.
which I mentioned wanting to watch last time, and I ended up watching it with my brother over Thanksgiving, and I will say that the show has been getting a lot of hype for how good it is, and I think it's deserved. I think it's also a great show.
Is it a miniseries
I-
or a show?
It's one show
Okay.
right now, 8 episodes, 8 or 9 episodes. But it's the story of the Penguin, right? It's in the Matt Reeves, the Batman universe,
Yeah.
using the same Colin
Colin Farrell.
Farrell performance, and he's just so fucking good. It's actually insane. The prosthetics were obviously the standout from the movie. Everyone's like, "Wait, that's Colin Farrell? What?
Yeah, I know.
What are you
It
talking
looks
about? That's crazy
nothing
with
like
the
him."
voice. That's
Yeah.
crazy." And he does that for the entire series, and man, he eats up that role. You don't see Colin Farrell, you just see Oswald Cobb. I guess they call him now. They dropped the Cobblepot, which
Ooh.
is stupid.
You
But
don't like
whatever.
Cobblepot? Why not? It's a very
I
comic
don't
book
know.
name.
It's not marketable. It's like, shut up.
That's true, I guess.
I don't care. But considering the show is just so solid around, there's a minor nitpick. The writing is fantastic. Dialogue's great. All the characters, you get enough time with like the core cast to really flesh out everyone. It's just a great crime drama, up there with like you know, like prestige television. Like
Okay.
I've heard it. I still haven't watched any of The Sopranos,
Right.
and I'm not saying it's compared to that, but obviously it takes inspiration from that kind
Well,
of
because is it
like
sort of like a mobster type of thing?
yeah.
Like he's a
It's
gang member?
very much a mobster.
Is it about
There's
like
like
his
it's
how he
only
eventually
crime.
got
There
into
is
the?
no.
Yeah.
It is like the least comic book show that you'll
Sure.
like ever
Okay.
watch. It's
Interesting.
just straight up Oswald Cobb, the Penguin, just being like the slimiest rat bastard piece of shit you could ever think of. Like he's a talker, he's a yapper, and he just weasels his way into situations and like pulls at the strings in order to like he gets himself in the most fucked up situations where you're like everyone should be everyone should be gunning for you. You are the worst person. You have hurt so many people, but somehow he has his hands in the right pockets and he has done this before in this
Okay.
episode.
That's
And
cool.
like there are plans within plans. It's a very smart show where the characters are kind of playing games with each other, and it is all believable for the most part. But it's also great to have a show that is like it's not even just I guess this isn't even relegated to being a show, but just the fact that this is a property
Right.
of a villain and the villain is actually like evil. We're not talking about like
Yeah.
oh Thanos where like oh yeah I'm doing this for the greater good. It's
Yeah.
like no, this motherfucker is bad man. Like is constantly doing things that are like some of the most fucked up things you imaginable.
Yeah.
Like the worst things humanly imaginable, and you are like the writing is so good because it constantly gets you to not empathize with him, but you're kind of rooting for him. You understand some of his character, but like also you come to learn that he's a fucking liar and will say anything he can to further his own needs. You get very small glimpses every once in a while of like why he's made this way. It's just a great character study. Really impressive show. It's high budget. The action is pretty relegated to certain moments, but the budget is there. It's well filmed. It just fits very well into with the wider Reeves universe, I guess. But it doesn't have to be because it's really not tied super closely to the movie. Like, there's no mention of Batman at all. Just like
Or like any
spoiler
other
alert,
characters in that.
he's
It's
not
just
in the
the
movie.
Penguin.
They don't ever mention him. Basically, he's just you're there following the Penguin, and he's doing crime. He's doing bad things, and you're along for the ride. It's nice that it's not super long, just like a good season-long show. And yeah, they killed it.
Yeah, that's cool. I'd like to check it out because I did enjoy that the Batman movie.
Yeah.
And I'm aware of his character and that there, so just to hear that it's been fleshed out in a good way and it's not just like a money like there was this movie made and now we're making a TV show to elongate like the shit that Disney does, I guess, with the Marvel
Yeah.
and Star Wars stuff, like one of those things. It seems
Yeah,
to be
it's nowhere
better than those,
near, not even close. And I've watched like basically all the Star Wars stuff. Not recently, but I've watched a lot of them. And damn,
the Star Wars shows.
none of them come close to the Penguin. Not even like the Mandalorian.
Okay, cool.
Andor is maybe the closest, but I think the Penguin is better than the Mandalorian, probably, or Andor.
Yeah, I've stayed away from those shows. I'm like, I'm good.
You'll have to go through them eventually.
Oh no,
Oh,
I don't. Oh no. For
maybe,
this channel, maybe.
maybe
For the sake of the channel.
the content.
This is my dedication. My yeah. All right. So yeah, that'll I guess finish up our show section on the video games, which I have 6 of these things. Some of them I'll have more to say than others. Some of them actually these first well, 2 of them I have not a whole lot to say. It's just kind of like I did the thing.
I have 4, so you can go first.
Yeah. So yeah, the one of them I played was Star Ocean, the second story R. I was finishing up that one.
Yeah.
And it's a very short JRPG. It's like one of the shortest I've come across. It's only like 25 hours it took me. And I did a decent amount of the random side shits here and there. But almost the problem I guess I have with it is that it's too fast. The pacing is very quick in the story, and
Hmm.
the ending just sort of happens to me. I'm like, oh, I guess that was the final boss. Interesting. I guess that's the credits in front of my face right there. Um, and to me, it feels underwhelming in that way because I guess that's partly my fault because for these types of things, I look for. I'm cool with the longer types of games where I could just really get super invested to the world and the characters and all that, just get sucked in a
Hmm.
way. And that's not at all what this one is. This is like you want something relatively short, a story that you could sort of sit and breeze through with a game that will, in terms of difficulty, challenge you at times. I think, uh, and it's not a bad time overall. There's like that minor complaint about like the voice, them voicing the character real name, and then I have the typed up
Right.
fictional name
Yeah.
that I'm giving them. It's like okay, whatever. There's like random polish shit like that. But overall, it's a decent little thing. Nothing that'll I think super immensely stick with me a whole lot. But I might revisit it at some point because there's that you could start off as a different character amongst the two. I don't know what differences that really has. But also there's 11 optional party members, and you can only have 6 of them at a time. So if
You just lock
so
yourselves
yeah,
out.
yeah, exactly. Which I didn't know because I just said yes to
Yeah.
everybody. I'm like, yes, join my team, join my army, and then I was locked out of the rest of them. So I might return to it in order to see everybody else and sort of see what they're all about. Because the characters were not bad. Like the writing isn't anything especially amazing. The voice acting is like uh, it's like it's okay. It's not
Hmm.
terrible. Um, but I would still be sort of interested in checking out what else this game has to offer randomly. But yeah, nothing like super gripping, amazing. It's
Noteworthy.
decent.
Hmm.
It's decent though.
Sounds good. Last we left off, I was playing through Dragon Age: The Veilguard, and I
Mm.
ended up
Oh, that's
finishing
right.
that game. All the controversy surrounding it, and I was able to come to my own conclusion about the
Because
video
that's what we
game
do here.
that
That's what we
everyone
do
has
here.
talked about, um, and just felt the need to formulate my own opinion on
Hell
on a
yeah.
piece of media. So I finished that, and I have to say it was pretty good. It was enjoyable. I liked it. I think it is probably it's the worst Dragon Age game in the franchise, and I understand people being disappointed with it. I think it is fair to say that it's a disappointing game, but I think it's really harsh now that I've played through the entire game that everyone is saying like, oh, it's a terrible game. It's bad. It's boring. It's awful. It's the worst thing. It's woke, anti piece of whatever. I don't care. It was decent. The combat was fun for the most part for me. I didn't get bored or anything. I thought the build potential was really cool with the gear that you get. I think the loot was satisfying. I never got bored of it.
That's cool.
I it was I don't remember if I spoke on it, but the way they did the gear was really interesting. Where you would pick up just whatever like a basic rarity of gear of like a chess piece, right? And you would carry that. It would have two essentially ability or like perks unlocked, and then when you would find another piece of that same item of like a chest in the world in the future, it would combine them, upgrade the rarity, and then unlock another perk.
Interesting.
So it dealt with the problem with like duplicates in a really interesting way. And I thought it was pretty cool. Just like every single, it kept me wanting to find items and kind of use them to upgrade what I already had, because each kind of piece of armor that you would get would fit into a certain kind of play style or build that you're going to. Like, oh, this would lower like a bunch of cooldowns, or this would let you spam your abilities. This would let you unlock like takedowns way earlier, or like buff up defense. So that kind of like play style really interested me about the game, and it kept me engaged. I think, as I said last time, the writing is the most disappointing part, probably. I think it's just really out of the ordinary for the series. It's just like very sanitized and kind of very corporate. I think I understand what people are saying. Overall, I think it's not as bad as people have said. I think there are still great moments in the writing. Like the companions that you get aren't butchered. They're not the worst things in the world. I think over the course of the game, I liked basically all the companions. I don't think they're one of the best companion groups in like a BioWare game compared to like a Mass Effect or a Dragon Age like 1 or Inquisition. But they have depth. You get to spend a lot of time with them and help them out with a bunch of problems, because that's what you do in the game. You're the problem solver.
That's what you do in RPGs. You
yes, what you do in every fucking
Doesn't matter how
RPG,
big or
including
small
all
the
of the
issue
other
is.
Dragon Age ones. But only for this one are people complaining about the fact that, oh, you feel like you're just like a manager and you're just solving problems for them. It's like, yeah, you do that for like every single fucking RPG, JRPG
Ever,
in the world. It's not that deep. It's a little clunky in this one, but it's forgivable. I think it was a decent game. I would rank it with like Mass Effect Andromeda, where like BioWare is going in a different direction with their games, and it is alienating the fan base that they established at the very beginning of their development. So the first like Mass Effect, or the first Mass Effect and the first Dragon Age got people like very happy, and Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, or sorry, Knights of the Old Republic, not the SWTOR one. That's a separate bag. But they've just constantly been changing who they're marketing their games to, which is pissing off an established fan base.
Right.
Understandably so, but I think it's already too late. I think people who are upset that this game is not what they expected, they might as well just cut ties, because BioWare is not really making games for
They're moving
them.
on.
They're moving on. And it's really the people who like the worlds that they've created that are sticking around, I think. Like, I love the world of Dragon Age, which is why I'm going to keep checking out the games, even if people say it's awful, when in reality it's not that bad. And same with Mass Effect. It's like, I'm gonna keep checking them out, just because I like the world and I trust them still to have like interesting lore and characters, and develop a good enough experience for me to enjoy my time gaming. So that's all I'll say about that tumultuous topic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's certainly something noteworthy to even say about it. Because again, when we talked about it last time, that was especially when it was being talked about. By the time that
media
video gets
storm.
uploaded, it'll already have been sort of rolled over by then. But when we had discussed it, that was when there was that overwhelming negativity, I guess, over it. And even by now, it's, I guess, cooled off. I don't think it's. I've seen still much like people defending it.
Yeah.
It's still kind
People
of just
like to get up in arms about
Yeah.
whatever the newest. I don't know.
Yeah, and I feel like most of the people complaining
everyone loves to have
about
battles.
it.
Yeah.
Most of the people complaining about it, I feel like, are probably not even people who like were gonna play it anyways. It's just like
No.
they're like seeing random dialogue and they're like, that shouldn't exist in my medieval fantasy, but it's like not even
Exactly.
aren't even gonna be invested in
Yeah.
actually
You
sitting down.
weren't
and
gonna play the game. This is not about the game.
Yeah.
It's about everything else.
agenda.
Yeah.
Not to get political.
Not my video game. Oh no. Yeah. It's tiring. It's annoying. It made me fucking. That whole debacle made me cringe so hard at gamers just in general, and being like, this is it? This is it, bro? Really? Am I a part of this? Ugh. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
A sobering moment for the gamer sphere, as you might say.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm glad we're past that, but that shit is just gonna happen to another game
Oh yeah, totally.
probably in the next few months.
Yeah, there was this really
gotta be
great video
controversy.
by you know the YouTuber Sean.
I just watched that.
The
Yeah.
fucking Stellar Blade one.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep,
that
yep.
was
And
such
it's
a
the same
great,
fucking
fantastic.
thing.
And
It's the same thing that
dude
happened to
on
this one.
on Twitter. He was
Yep.
talking about some
Yep.
other random shit.
I've
and people
seen
were
some of
calling
his
him out.
random.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was
Great video, by the way. People should check out this YouTuber Sean. He did this
Yeah.
video,
we can
which
talk
was
about that
it
episode.
was he talked about Stellar Blade and the people complaining about random aspect of it, but like in a fake way. But it's also that disguised as a review of the game where he like goes in and talks.
He
about
actually
that.
plays it. Yeah.
Which is interesting and cool, and he's a great YouTuber.
Yeah.
So
Very good video essays, intelligent and well studied. Yeah.
But that's enough comparing ourselves to a much better YouTuber than us, because people will watch them and be like, these Jupiter people fucking suck ass. Like, anyways.
Exactly. That's how it goes.
So yeah, I played UFO 50, and I guess something within me activated where I'm like, these old ass titles, I need to go back and check this shit out of pure curiosity to see like what they were like. And as a gamer person, I value the histories of the game series that I've played. And so it's always interesting seeing like, here's how one thing started and here's how it eventually is now. Like, why is it in Persona 3, like when you're moving around the map, like when you're navigating the map menu and you're deciding to teleport from one place to another, why is it that there's this little icon of the player, which is a blue ball over a little spinning diamond? And it's because in the very first Shin Megami Tensei game, that's what you looked like when you were walking around the overworld. And that's how it is in every Shin Megami Tensei and a lot of the Persona games. Like when you're walking around the overworld like that, you just look like that. And it's because that was in the first game, and they just do that same shit and everything else.
Legacy.
Yeah, and noticing stuff like that is cool, and even down to like more precise like gameplay mechanics, like, oh, this thing was brought up in this game in the series and now they're bringing it back in this way, and random stuff like that. And there's this one series called Sonic the Hedgehog, and it's a pretty popular series. They're even making a third movie, live action in quotes, movie about it. And it's a series that I did grow up with. I grew up with a couple of the 3D titles for the GameCube and Wii, which were games that I loved as a big idiot child. If I went back to them now, I may not as much, maybe. But I enjoyed them for what they were, and I was curious about the legacy, the history of this blue hedgehog man. So I checked out this Sonic Origins Plus collection thing, which is advertised as 16 games in one, but it's really like 4 real games.
Sure.
And then they have these Game Gear, these 12 Game Gear games, which the Game Gear was just Sega's like shitty handheld, and they're just brought over here. And I've played a couple of those ones, and it's just like, I really cannot be fucked to bother around with like beating all of those. But I did beat the 4 main ones, which are the original Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic CD, Sonic 2, and then Sonic 3 and Knuckles, which Sonic 3 and Knuckles I think is the second Sonic 3, because there's Sonic 3 original, and then there's, I don't know what happened. They added the and Knuckles to it might be a slightly different version of the game. I don't know how different it is. I'm not on that mindset, but from my understanding, people have super hardcore Sonic fans have mixed feelings about this collection, because believe it or not, Sega in the past has released other collections of their past games,
really?
like past like Sonic collection shits. And people were less fans of this one because like it was overpriced for like the amount of shit you get, which I think was the main complaint. I bought it half off for $20, and I think I think that is a pretty fair price. Like $40 is maybe too much, but $20 I'd say it was worth it. And yeah, I just went in order of each game, just playing them all. And starting with the first one, you just drop in, you're in Green Hill Zone. That music's playing. I'd played, I think, the original like Green Hill Zone level somehow, at least once or twice. I don't remember how or where, but I'd like been there before. It's something. Maybe the Super Smash Bros. Brawl demo. I don't think that was the thing though, for that game specifically. Somehow I had played it at some point, or at least a part of it. And yeah, you just drop in and that music's playing and you're just fucking in it, and it feels like you're playing through history.
Mm.
And then the rest of the game happens, and it's like it's weird because I don't necessarily know how to. This is gonna sound weird, but I don't know how to play Sonic, or I don't know how Sonic is meant to be played.
Nope.
Because
It's one of the weirdest games.
He's supposed to be going fast, but then
Yeah.
sometimes shit just comes out like out
You
of
go too
nowhere at
fast.
you because
Yeah.
you're going too fast, and so you get kind of fucked over by going too fast. And there are times where you have to slow down anyways for random platforming stuff, and sometimes
Right.
there's kind of puzzles going on, but that's mostly in Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Um, and it's this weird thing because I think the purpose of them is you don't just play through them once, you play them over and over again to sort of perfect them, and
Right.
then you know exactly here's when I jump now, which will lead me to here, and then I pick up this item, and then I go this direction to take this path, and that'll give me the best time or whatever to get the highest ranking thing. Because to technically, I think, complete the game, you need to beat all of the bonus stages, because that's how you collect the Chaos Emeralds in the original game, and the other ones also. You got to beat the bonus stages to get them, and then you turn into Supersonic, and then that, I guess, changes the ending or something. Like I know at least in Sonic 3 and Knuckles, I'm pretty sure it's that one, where if you collect all of them, there's like a different part of the boss that occurs like like another phase, and you get like a different ending or something. I don't know if that's how it is in all of them, but I know at least that one is a thing there. And yeah, Sonic the Hedgehog, the original, it took about an hour, and I'm not like the biggest fan of it ever. I enjoyed the Green Hill Zone because I was like, oh shit, I'm doing a thing that I've seen this before, and people care about it and love it, and I'm in it. And
Doing it.
the rest of the game is just like, okay, here's a bunch of bullshit, and that fucking water level, man, I'm so annoyed by it. Like the theming is kind of cool because it's like this like sort of ancient temple that's been like flooded
Right.
over time or whatever, and like it looks nice, I guess, but it's such an annoying fucking thing. But the nice thing about this collection is it doesn't do lives. It doesn't like, because I would be like so
Just
ready to throw
constantly
my
starting
controller
over
or
it.
something.
Yeah.
Because I think lives in video games are an outdated thing. I don't think that's a crazy take to have, like lives in video games. Like
Yeah.
there's no room for them anymore. Like that was an arcade thing from 40 years ago to make the children spend more of their parents'
More money,
money
yep.
on the machines to keep going. And games continued with that for years. And maybe about I don't know, 5, maybe a little bit over that now. I guess around the time Mario Odyssey released, or a
Yeah.
little bit before, it was like, games are done with lives. That's done, which I'm totally here for, because fuck those. And yeah, Sonic 1 is okay. It's whatever. My favorite one was Sonic CD, which was the second one. It was Metal Sonic or whatever. You like race against him. I liked it the most because it was the shortest and the easiest. I didn't have to like fuck around too much with like, oh god, I gotta replay this section because I died at this random thing that I didn't know about somehow. And then Sonic 2, I don't know. I guess the ordering is I like Sonic CD the best, and then Sonic 3 and Knuckles, I guess, and then Sonic 1, and then Sonic 2. I think it was Sonic 2 that had this really annoying boss fight where you would fight 2 in a row. You would fight this different version of Metal Sonic that Eggman built, and then you would follow that up with the most like bullshit boss out there, which I needed to look up like the exact. I cheesed that one, where it's like the window of when he attacks makes it, to me, still makes no fucking sense. So I just had to wait until like one moment specifically in his entire attack cycle to actually mess with him, which once I did that, it wasn't too bad, but up until that point, I was legitimately so lost. And the final boss in Sonic 3 and Knuckles was a little annoying too, but like, whatever. But Sonic 3 and Knuckles is the most solid out of all of them because it's the longest. It has the most amount of stages, and each stage is a bit longer, which I'm not a particular fan of. I like them being sort of short and quick, like in the first two. And yeah, the Sonic 3 and Knuckle ones, the stages they go from like sort of maybe 2 or 3 minutes to closer to 5 or maybe even 6. or longer if you die a bunch of times like I did.
Yeah, maybe.
And but there's like more concepts being explored in that one, and there's more like different platforming challenges and stuff like that. And maybe the level design is better. I couldn't tell you though, truly. Like I couldn't
They all
explain to
kind of
you
blend
like
together, yeah.
what good levels design exists in Sonic. I could not be that person for you to tell you
It's a
which
very
which is good and which is
strange
not.
game series. It
It
like
is.
it's very obtuse. Just like you're trying to go fast as we have stated and has been stated, but you end up hitting an obstacle and it just slows you completely down.
Yeah.
And like you're supposed to learn obviously to avoid that obstacle. But just the act of hitting an obstacle and slowing down your momentum so much is so jarring that it really puts me off of those games.
Yeah, it's
I've
weird.
like tried to I haven't really tried, okay, but I have played a few like levels here and there
Sure.
from like various different games.
Okay.
And like every time it
Yeah,
just
you've given it a shot.
feels so strange and alien
It's
to me.
weird.
The controls don't make sense, and it's just like it's not a game franchise that has like particularly like intrigued me.
No,
or
I think
made
I
me
think I think
seek
it's
out.
one where you literally have to play it when you're 6 years old or whatever.
It's
and if
formative,
if you do
yeah,
that, then
yeah.
it's you're there for life. And if you miss those years, then it's fucking I don't care.
It's going to be a little weird.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess so.
And yeah, but this collection is slightly better because it's in the widescreen rather than the more condensed thing, and so you could sort of see a little bit further than what you would have been able to see originally. Which is true with a lot of these remastered collections of these, however old video games. And yeah, as an experience overall, I'm glad I did it to check out and see like where certain shits come from, because I do feel like I understand like Sonic more legitimately by going through each of these things. And the collection I don't think is that bad. It has like a music and song section. It has these collectibles you earn from doing levels, and they even have like these missions where it's like yeah, I don't know. It's like various challenges. You go through this level and do this thing
Sure.
this many times.
Objectives,
Like,
yeah,
random
yeah.
shit like that. They have like an achievements thing also separately, where it's like do all these random objectives and these things. And it's not bad overall. I'd say
There's
at
enough to do.
$40 I wouldn't get it, but at half of that or a higher discount I would. If you're interested in it, maybe sure, why not? So it was a decent time to go through overall, I suppose. So yeah.
Cool. Checking out the origins of video games.
Exactly. That's what. Yeah.
Just about.
That's what we're here for.
All right. After I finished Dragon Age: The Veilguard, I ended up just taking some time to play through a game I've already played through, but it's a roguelike, so you get some runs in.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Slay the Spire,
Yeah.
which is pretty well known in the roguelike sphere. Just a great kind of deck builder. It's absolutely one of my favorite roguelikes of all time, and it has the legs, I think, to make it to some of my top games of all time. Period. It's just a great game. The design is so good. It's super satisfying once you get a good build, and it's flexible enough so that you can feel like each run is pretty unique, especially with 4 different characters with massive decks and a ton of different. There's a colorless deck card. There are relics. There's a million and one ways to have an interesting run, and that's what is so kind of immediately arresting about roguelikes. Is just like you get a nice kind of quick run through, and you feel like you get better, and there's constant progression, even though you're doing the same thing over and over and over. Usually the loop is so addictive and unique and interesting that it keeps you hooked, and that's what makes a good roguelike fantastic, and that's why Slay the Spire is so good, and why I think I'll continue to go back to that game, and just whenever I want. It's gonna be one of those comfort games, I think, that you can just like take wherever, and it'll be always there. So love that game.
Yeah.
excited for the sequel that is coming out
Oh yeah.
next year, probably.
Right. How many hours have you put into this one
Uh,
as a roguelike?
that's a good
Probably a decent
question.
amount.
Yeah, like
Who knows?
100 or so,
Yeah.
probably. 100 or 200 maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard good things from it. I think I tried it for a little bit. I couldn't get into it, but I only,
Mm,
played it for a small
yeah.
amount during like I don't even
It's definitely a
remember
game
early
that feels
college.
better the more you learn.
Right.
Like the
Yeah,
more
yeah,
runs
yeah.
you get, the better you get,
No,
and
I
you
bet.
can make better, more educated decisions on what cards to choose and how you want to kind of tailor your deck.
Mm-hmm.
And it just feels really cool. Once you get everything kind of up and running and you can make informed decisions, it helps you feel really cool for sure.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's how roguelites are in general. They sort of get
Yeah.
better over time, and once you sort of learn to perfect and understand every little
Then
thing
you're
about
bought
them,
in. Yeah.
I feel like that's what they're all about. And I might revisit this one at some
It's
point.
a
When I
weird
find the time,
genre.
I don't know when I will.
It's a weird genre because it feels very
Yeah,
like unforgiving. Like you're just constantly losing.
yeah, they're usually
You,
pretty
you like
hard.
you know that you set
They're
like the
designed
game's
to
set up an
lose.
objective, but it's extremely hard to get there initially.
Mhm.
So it is all about like coming back like from getting beat up all the time, just like standing back up and doing another run. But it does feel good because, like you said, it's that sense of progression that you are getting better, and it is very satisfying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool. Um, I'll hit this one super quickly because I don't have a whole lot to say about it because it was one I had previously talked about again, and I'm bringing it up here. I played a little bit more of UFO 50 for maybe a day
Hmm.
or so, and I beat this one called the Tactics since then, which is this. I don't even know how to explain it. You're like trying to take over this. You have a castle on your side, and then there's like an enemy side, and you each turn is sort of you get a unit, and you sort of try to like you have so much time to move them up and down or back to manipulate them to eventually go and move into the other side's castle, and the
Hmm.
enemy gets units each turn, and you get a random one each turn, and each of them do different things. Like there's just a generic knight dude who just moves forward and attacks the thing in front of them if there is any, and then there's an archer who stays back and can attack from far away, and then there's like a shield person who can block the archer stuff, and so it's sort of like rock paper scissors, but there's eventually maybe 10 different units or so.
Hmm.
And it gets pretty chaotic by the later levels, and it's a little challenging. I was able to, I don't know, it just sort of becomes, I guess, second nature. Like you're not necessarily because you don't even have that much time to think. Like each turn of like, oh, I got to move this
Hmm.
person here because this thing. It's sort of like almost more of a reaction sort of thing.
Like a Tetris kind of thing.
Yeah, but it's exactly yeah, and I'd say it's still one of the for me is one of my more preferred ones from that
Hmm.
collection. There, and I beat it. I beat the campaign mode or whatever.
Oh, okay.
That's how good I am at that thing. It's like 25 levels or so. It doesn't take super long, I don't think, but you can get stuck sometimes. But every time I did, I just held off and then went back to it later, and eventually it just sort of it clicks, I guess. But
Hmm.
that's that one. And then I took a look at a franchise I had stayed away from for a very long time. One that I had been into in the GameCube era, and then they sort of had mixed, middling, maybe not so great things from the Wii to the Wii U
Hmm.
and to the start of the Switch until now, where they have. I think this is the second mainline game they have on the Switch, which is Monkey Ball, Super Monkey Ball, Banana Rumble, which I don't know if you've heard of this franchise at all. They're
I have heard of the franchise.
yeah, I
Yes.
guess it's another Sega thing. It's the same director as the Yakuza games, interestingly enough.
Is it really?
Yeah, because they're quite
Okay.
different.
They are.
And if you don't know what Monkey Ball is, it's essentially you're a monkey in a ball and you roll around different. I guess they're essentially obstacle courses.
Yeah. It's like a platforming
Yeah, and
puzzle kind of
they're
thing.
pretty difficult because I mean I don't know it's sensitive, and when you move
The
around, the
controls
camera
are
tilts.
very
And some of the GameCube ones I feel like they're fun, but also kind of bullshitty. And this one, Banana Rumble, is a decent entry point I'd say, to the series for like a newcomer coming in, because like it starts off way easier and it gradually gets difficult at a good pace. I'd say like there was a couple levels near the end that were taking me kind of a while, but I was able to get through like all of them in this game within a couple days. A few of them, I'll be honest, did get me a little bit motion sicky on with the big ass screen.
I get it. Yeah.
Because the screen sort of tilts a lot when you move, especially at a like all around. And if I get motion sick, especially when I'm in a vehicle and we're going and stopping a lot, or like we're going vertically up and down a lot, and I sort of felt that a little bit in some of these levels, not necessarily to the stomach, but I think a little bit in the head. I was like feeling them from like doing it for however
Getting
long.
the spins.
Yeah, I was like, oh god, which is usually bad, but I was able to get through it. So, and yeah, it had like a story mode. I think most of these games do, which I legitimately did not pay any attention to at all. Like some of the games I've played recently, I've zoned out certain moments of the stories, which I should not have. I'm like, I shouldn't have done that. Like when I played Final Fantasy 16, I'm like, oh god, I missed that. I didn't pay attention at all. What happened.
Oh shit.
In this one, I was like, fucking, I do not care. I am just monkey balling. I'm not.
It's monkey ball.
Listening to whatever random things they're doing or saying.
Yeah.
And yeah,
that's fair.
I over Thanksgiving we hosted a cousin of ours. He came to visit, and we played like the 4-player mode of it, where we would just go through the levels, which I had already beaten. But there was an extra challenge, which was actually being able to tell like what you're doing, because the screen is split into the 4 quadrants, and it's
right
on that point really hard to tell what's going on. We tried doing the battle mode, which there's like these battle mode things that exist in Super Monkey Ball 1 and 2, which I had played on the GameCube, and it's essentially like, I mean, I don't know, that's you get like items and you try to like knock people off different like maps and courses and stuff. And there's also other various game modes, like one you go bowling, and then there's like a different one where there's a bunch of racetracks. So it's those first 2 games, they had like a decent amount of, they had like a good main obstacle course thingy game mode, and then they had a good like couple of multiplayer just like fuck around with people things, which I thought they were gonna do in this one, and I think they have, but for some reason they don't allow 4-player battle modes. I think it's only 1 to 2 players, which doesn't make sense. I haven't messed with it, so I don't even know what it is. But I was expecting like, oh, we're gonna do essentially Super Monkey Ball 1 or 2, like a modernized version of whatever those battle modes were, and they were not in this, which confused me. I still haven't checked them out, and I guess I won't at this point, because I mean, I don't know, I'm sort of beyond it. But yeah, this was a decent little thing that I've done. So yeah, it was nice to revisit this series. I haven't visited since I was maybe, I don't know, 11 or 12 or 13 or 14 or something like that. Whenever I last
go back
played
to your roots.
Yeah, exactly, a little bit. And it's a good, decent, modernized version of this thing. It does some things new. You get like a fucking like a boost move to like help make you go for it faster, or change the direction you're going, or whatever.
Sure.
So yeah, it's decent. And there's different characters you can play as where the stats actually matter. And my brothers played as this one character that had like a super, they had like heavy stats in the boost thing, so they could just boost off a particular ramp at the right time and just launch across the level, which as some of the other characters was just not possible at all. So that they had fun with that, and I don't know, I didn't really mess around with literally any of them besides just the main dude. So that's cool that they did that at least. But yeah, an enjoyable time, I think, both single player and multiplayer.
Cool. I myself, after kind of getting a few good runs of Slay the Spire, and went back to a franchise that is near and dear to my heart when I finished Dishonored Death of the Outsider, which is essentially Dishonored 2.5, essentially. It was developed using all the same kind of engine and many of the same assets from Dishonored 2, which is one of my favorite games of all time, and essentially takes what could have been DLC, but is instead like packaged as its own individual game, which I hope was priced down. I think it was, because it is a good game. Like, it's a great game. I think I love Dishonored as a game kind of series. I think stealth games are some of my sleeper picks for like favorite like genre of games. I really like stealth games. They're very satisfying to me, and Dishonored in particular does it so well with the open kind of sandbox nature of its levels, where essentially you have like 6 to 7 missions, I would say, which all take place in essentially one large level that have a ton of different buildings, houses, apartments, hideouts, sewers, like transportation, physical transportation, obstacles, obviously, enemies, NPCs, and you are just given an objective and placed at the beginning of the level, and they're like, all right, you are given a set of abilities and some tools, and find your way to the objective, do it however you want. You can do it unseen, you can kill everyone. And it's really great how kind of tactile and fun the world becomes when you're allowed that much freedom. And I think throughout the entire series, they just nailed that feeling and that kind of sense of cool where you like the movement and the combat and the tools and the, I guess, magic abilities that you get all kind of serve the same purpose of helping you kind of maneuver around the level in a way that is really fun and engaging, as well as kind of allow you to solve problems that you might not be able to if you chose to do like another way. So there are a ton of different ways that you can go through any different level. And the story is always a standout for like what would be like a normal stealth game where you're just kind of like doing whatever you want in an open world. It's the world and the characters and the writing that kind of serve to make Dishonored so special for me. Because like I love the world that it's a weird kind of I don't know, almost steampunk, but like with elements of like Victorian era, like the rat plague is super big, and it's almost like elements are like inspired by Venice and like weird, like really interesting world building. Dishonored 2 especially, and Dishonored Death of the Outsider follows in its footsteps of having like really interesting technological like breakthroughs that are like experienced in the world as you are like continuing through the story, and it serves to make the levels more interesting as they are then placed into the levels as obstacles or whatever, and it just makes for a really fun experience. I love these games to death. I think the Death of the Outsider game is just as good as any of the others. It's really hard to pick a favorite out of all of them. I think obviously I love 1 and 2 because they're full games, and if you like the experience of Death of the Outsider, then I just want more. And so 1 and 2 are great for that. But it's just something about how many tools they give you, which isn't a whole lot, but because of how reactive and open the nature of the levels are, it just makes it really cool to just find new ways of dealing with whatever objectives you can. I love those games.
Yeah, nice. How many are there in total of those?
So there's Dishonored 1, Dishonored 2, and then Death of the Outsider,
which is essentially like a half game type of thing.
Yeah,
like...
yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
Very worthwhile though if you ever feel like getting into a stealth-based game. It's probably my favorite.
I guess the only stealth-based games I've played are the Assassin's Creed shits, which are I guess the biggest of this genre, you can call it. Other than like I guess the Batman Arkham games have
are
stealth heavy, but also have more action maybe than Dishonored. I don't really know much about them other than I guess you talking about them here. I've heard about them elsewhere from people enjoying them. And yeah, maybe I'll check them out someday also if I ever get a singular minute of time
maybe.
to spend on them. So yeah, that's cool. You had played it before. You're revisiting it.
So
For like
I
how
had
long?
never,
Oh,
I hadn't played Death of the
oh, okay, okay,
Outsider.
okay.
Yeah, I played 1 and 2 multiple times.
Yeah. Okay.
But this was my one blind spot on the franchise, so
Is
I
this
had
a
to finish
series
it up.
that like they're still sort of making, or they just haven't announced anything,
I
or
don't know.
they
They
just
haven't announced anything.
okay
Um,
for like years?
and yeah, there's definitely where places they could go with the
Mm-hmm.
series. I'd be interested if like did something just in the world because I really like the world, and they have a bunch of like, there's a lot of potential there to explore different games.
Just do like a completely
Um,
different gameplay style set in the same
Maybe.
universe
I
thing.
mean, I would be down to try that, although I don't know if that would really sell. So like,
Probably not.
you know, for the
To
for
you.
the investors.
Yeah, you'll be the sole
So
audience of that.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
cool though. And yeah, I think last time I had mentioned I returned to Final Fantasy VII Remake, specifically the intergrade version of it, which contained the Final Fantasy VII Remake intermission episode
Yes,
intermission, which
right.
was Yuffie's section thing or whatever.
Hmm.
Which I went back to that on hard mode. And they had that Clash Royale sort of style thing, Fort Condor, which I enjoyed in that, and they made it slightly more difficult. It didn't. The only challenging one was the last level, I think, which gave me a few tries, but I got it eventually. And hard mode in general wasn't too bad at all, really. And the intention of doing this was just, I don't know, to get all the achievements or whatever, because I'm a big stupid head idiot who values these things sometimes for whatever reason, even though they really don't matter, and they sort of just kind of waste your time, maybe, to be honest, a little bit. But they're nice to have if you can get them. Um, and there was just one or two. There was two achievements left to get in this shit, and one of them was there's these VR missions they're called, which is essentially just like fighting simulators where you go and fight like certain waves of enemies or like boss fights and stuff. And one of them with Yuffie was fight these three absurdly difficult bosses in a row. But I think it starts with the most difficult one, and then they get progressively easier,
Okay.
maybe slightly. Um, and I gave that a couple of goes and like barely got anywhere. I'm just like, okay, it's something. I'm gonna wait on this because I think I did it at the start, or like halfway through the hard mode playthrough. So I'm like, okay, I'll just beat this hard mode thing, and then I'll go back to it. Um, and I eventually beat the hard mode of it, and then I decide before I go and kill my brain doing that, I'll go back to the main game where there's this additional super boss uh, in you have to go to chapter 17 out of, I think there's 18 or 19 chapters in the main game of Final Fantasy VII Remake. And in chapter 17 there's another VR mission thing which has this additional super boss in it. So I'm like, okay, I'll go try and do that. And I figured that the just to get to that VR mission place, I know where it is. And I figured just to get to it would just be maybe like a couple minutes of, okay, I skip these cutscenes and then I walk to this area and then I'm there essentially. But I start playing like 20 minutes of it and I'm like going through these rooms. I've already gone through twice already because I've done it once on normal and once on hard mode like a year or two ago. And I'm like going through these rooms. I'm like, okay, when does the thing happen where I could go to the thing and get the achievement trophy person, fight them? And I keep going, and then I realize, oh shit, it wants me to redo this entire as like a couple out, maybe couple hour long, or at least an hour, in addition to where I left off from, like this section of the game over again to eventually
For
reach
what
this
reason?
place. And I'm just like, fuck this. So I might maybe do that again. I might go
Maybe.
back to it at some point because I did make a save, and I'm like, okay, fine. If I want to pick it up, I'll start from here, and I could redo this entire other section of the game again, which is kind of annoying. But like, I don't know. Maybe I'll do it. I probably won't. I probably won't. I'm probably done with it, I think.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean that kind of
It was annoying. Like
Roadblock.
just sent me
That
to the place
immediately
where I
just
could
sets
fight
you
the dude. I
back.
don't want to
Yeah.
redo this shit
Yeah.
all over again.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Because they're already punishing me by buying the game too early because I had to buy the DLC separately
Yeah.
or whatever. It's like, what do you mean? So yeah, that's that. Did you have another game to get through?
The one that I'm currently playing through now, which is of course Metaphor Refantasia, which you have already spoken on.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
now I figured I have to put my hat in the ring and give it a
Mhm.
playthrough myself.
Yeah.
And I am enjoying it a lot. I think all the things that you were saying, I'm agreeing with for the most part.
Mhm.
I think the writing is a standout for me. I'm really enjoying all the characters and the bonds that you get, obviously, as well as the overall narrative so far. Right now, I am infiltrating the ship. I'm in the
Okay.
crew quarters right now.
Yeah.
So
I
if you
know
know
that.
where that is,
Mhm.
yeah.
Still relatively early on, sort of. Like
Yeah,
first
which is
30%
crazy. It's
maybe
a
of the game.
big game. It's a big, long
yeah,
game that
it's
takes a long time because, I mean, all of Atlas's games take a really long time because of the way the schedule is laid out and formatted, as well as how long the dungeons are. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a beautiful game, and the animations are fantastic, and the art style is great. After seeing them a million times, they do start to take up a lot of time, and so I'm skipping through some of it.
Well, the battle animations you could mostly skip by
Yes,
just pressing
exactly.
the button again or whatever
Yeah.
for like the attack. I would do that a lot.
Yeah.
And I do those even in like the mainline SMT
Yeah,
games.
absolutely.
I just like immediately after pressing the command button to select what I'm doing, I just press the
Yeah.
same thing again to skip.
It's like I appreciate it first time.
Yeah, sure.
But once I'm gonna be
Yeah.
fighting 50 enemies in this dungeon, I'm
that's
okay
true.
with skipping through all of them.
Yeah. Which again,
I think
that first dungeon is it was fairly long comparatively to
that
the
was
other
a
ones
really
that come
long
after it.
one.
Like
Yeah.
the ship is a little long, sort of, but it's not as long as that first one. And then there's one near like maybe 60 to 70% of the way through that's a little long also.
Okay.
And then those are like the three big ones, and then everything else in between that is like relatively short and much more doable in a day. I don't know if you tried the first one in like a day thing to
I
like,
did
save
do
on
it in
time
a day.
or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
also.
started it before.
Oh, okay.
For all of the Persona games,
Yeah.
I think I ended up doing like every dungeon just about in like one day.
Yeah.
That's how I would do all of them. For this, the beginning one in Metaphor,
Yeah.
I did end up taking 2 days just because I didn't have enough MP.
And that's
like the
completely
MP bottleneck in this game is so real.
Yeah.
Like you run out of mana quicker than you will run out of health, and that is what you have to take into account. It's like
Yeah.
you can only get into so many battles because you have only so many resources to make it through.
Which I think is
but-
more fun in this one because again the scheduling of everything is a little bit looser.
It's it's very forgiving.
Yeah.
Like they give you
They give you a hell of time to do everything. Yeah.
which is good. I feel like
It's
there's always
nice not to
something to
worry
do,
about that.
always some way to progress, which is standard, and that's why, like, I mean, if you've liked any of Atlas's other games, then it's a fairly similar kind of game design. But I do like the medieval take. I think the art design is really cool. The design of the humans, I like a lot. And how inspired they are of like the weird ass Hieronymus Bosch paintings from the Renaissance.
By humans, for people who don't know, we're talking about the
Yes.
some of the bosses, those weird fucked up
monsters,
creature things. Not the humans we typically think of because they're being clever
instead
by twisting around the terms.
Instead, we have racism based on the actual races and different races of.
They still call
animals,
themselves people.
Humans.
They still call themselves people.
Men, they
and
call
man and
themselves
woman.
men,
Yeah,
men and women.
exactly.
So
But they're
there's
not,
only
they're
so
not
much.
humans, though.
Yeah,
They're men
you don't
and-
have to
they're
read
men and
into
women.
everything in these games.
Sure.
It is always like very kind of abstracted, but like they try and explain everything, and like it does get clunky at some points in the exposition. But that's pretty standard for the Persona games and now Metaphor, I guess. But I'm liking the companions so far.
That's good.
I I have a full party now, which is nice. It
Yeah,
makes
it takes a
the
while.
combat a
You
lot
stick
better.
you stick with
Yeah,
just 3 out of 4 for a while.
yeah, yeah. And having four is so much better for getting those synthesis
Yeah.
attacks out.
Hmm.
And it makes it a lot more fun. Just kind of tactics wise, because now I'm able to get into like the buffing and debuffing
Yeah.
where you want, like, that's how you can end up going through like hard mode. I'm just playing on normal mode,
Hmm.
but like if
Yeah, I did that
once
also.
you get everything running with your buffers, your debuffers, and you just nuke them with weakness if you have it, and or other high damaging attacks. I'm enjoying my time. I'm excited to hopefully talk more about it, more in depth on a
Yes.
future episode.
Hopefully we'll run one of those live action type
Yeah,
things maybe soon. Slightly,
but
ideally.
once I finish it, but just up until now, I'm saying I'm enjoying it, and
Hmm.
I, I like it a lot. It's a very solid game.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, it's very good. It's definitely one of the best of the year, for sure.
Hmm.
I forget what else came out and was competing for it, which I think probably even mentioned last time, but I already forget.
Yeah.
It was something. All right, yeah, cool. For me, my mission statement, my thought, my personal vow to myself was like, okay, once I do the 100%ing on Final Fantasy VII remake, intermission, whatever the shit, once I get all those trophies, I could finally move on to Rebirth. But since I was opting out of that. I was like, fuck that, I'm done. I could just, sort of freely move on to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which is the second out of 3 of these goddamn remake titles of the beautiful game that is Final Fantasy VII, and we're taking that game, we're modernizing it in a lot of ways, some for
Hmm.
better, some for worse, I guess, and we are just stretching that bitch out as far as it fucking can, as far as it can. Like we are just taking this like balled up little clay thing, and we are just taking it and stretching it for seemingly forever. Because this game is big. It's fairly bigger than the one that came before it, which makes sense because Final Fantasy VII Remake was focused on just the Midgar section of the
Right.
original, which is about the first quarter of the original game, the first 10 out of 40 hours approximately. And they end up turning the first 10 hours out of the 40-hour game into a 40-hour experience on its own for the first one. And
Hmm.
now for this, it goes from once you leave Midgard to, I know where in the story it stops, but it's like very close to the end. Like there's
Okay.
maybe only 5 to 10 hours left of it. So at least half of the game would be the second one, like taken from the original. And so it goes from maybe 20 to 25 hours to 80 maybe, but like that's me like fucking around doing every little thing.
Sure.
Because this is an open world, I guess it's more open zone type of game because it's like you reach this story point and now you can wander around this area and do whatever you want here, and then to get to this area you need to first progress to this thing, and all that. And it's been a while since I've done one of these types of games. I guess the last time I did it was Tears of the Kingdom, which was a follow up to Zelda Breath of the Wild, and that was a good
Hmm.
game. Um, Maybe better than this one, I guess, if I had to be super objective here or whatever. But it's not a bad version of these open world things because it's like, okay, now I climb this tower and I discover all these other little entry
Yeah. Yeah.
points of the
Yeah.
world, and now I could go here and look at this thing and stuff. And they're decent about filling in the world. There's definitely some blank spots here and there, but it's not like the most super compact, most effective world design thing in the world. But it's a decent one, and I mean they have the advantage of they're building off the original, so they already have like the main layout of here's this town here, and then you have to go through this area to reach here. But like just traversing the overworld in the original game was like super quick. It was
Hmm.
you just walk in for like 30 seconds from this town, and then you're now in this area or whatever. Or you take the buggy, which is this car, and you take it to this area, and it was like super fast thing. But now it's a fully fledged. I mean, every
It's an
corner
open
of the
world.
map
Mhm.
needs to be filled in. It needs to
Yep.
be 100 billion hour long experience or whatever. And yeah, the padding in the original, or I just said in the original, in the first Final Fantasy VII remake, the padding in the first remake bothered me a little bit, and I'm starting to feel the botheringness a bit stronger in this one, where like some of the shit they make up to like elongate certain sections of the game, which in the original would have just been, okay, you visit this area, here's a couple maybe optional dialogue shits you could look at, and then you just kind of leave and fuck off. Like there's this Costa del Sol area, which is sort of like this beach resort kind of area in the original game, and you sort of leave there after the initial town you get to after Midgar, so it's like the second, I guess, sort of main thing. In this one, it's like the third main thing. So you go to Junon first, technically. I'm like, whatever. But it's one of the things you get to in the original, and you don't really spend a whole lot of time there. There's like maybe an optional thing or two to do in there. And in this one, they give like, I don't know, it's like 2 hours of like required shit you need to do. It's like they make stuff the fuck up. They are really inventing events and random things out there in this, which it bothers me slightly, but in the end I'm still like not upset by this game at all, because of my personal bias of playing the original. I'm attached to this story already and these characters in this world, and like the story differences that occur I'm not like super upset by, because I'm not a person who legitimately grew up with this game in the
Right.
whatever time period this was released in, the original one. So whenever they're doing stuff slightly differently, I'm sort of interested in it. And they bounce around to this other character who wasn't really emphasized in the story super heavily at these certain points in the original. And those moments are interesting. I don't know where they're going with that. I'm like about halfway through the story so far, or the game, I guess, in general. And yeah, they just do a fuck ton. Like there's so many goddamn mini games in this fucking thing, Peter. It's they pretty much bring back every single one from remake and then add like double that.
Even
It's
more.
absurd.
Okay.
And so
Jeez.
but like one thing they do, they like Fort Condor, that Clash Royale thing they added in Intermission. They do it again here, but they fuck it up somehow. Like what was nice about the Fort Condor one in Intermission in the Yuffie thing was that you get to customize your own like troops. You like decide like what things you deploy and when. There were also these spells that you could cast, which were one-time things that can sort of mess with the board to deal damage, heal, debuff, whatever, like those kind of things. And they get rid of that, and instead it's just you have these sets of boring ass enemies that do nothing. Because again, like the unit versatility and variety in the Intermission was stronger, and in this one it's just like you already had a thing that was decent. Like why?
Yeah. Just
But
boiled it down.
There's less fights though. There's only 4 of them compared to Intermission, which had maybe 7 or 8. And those ones were all optional, and this one's optional too. And yeah, it's just annoying. And like the last fight you do for it is just such a fucking pain in the ass. It's so annoying. And on a hard mode, it's even harder because for whatever reason they gotta. Which I don't mind the idea of, okay, hard mode increases the difficulty of combat, maybe enemies hit harder and deal different attacks or whatever, and stuff like that, but they also increase the minigame difficulty in some way. I'm interested in that because that sort of means that to beat it on hard mode, you literally have to become a master of every single aspect of the game, which I don't necessarily have a problem with, just looking at it from the outside, but knowing how annoying the final level was on normal mode, the fucking
Makes you hesitate.
it's like
Yeah.
exactly, like the one thing stopping me from maybe coming back
Going to a hard
doing a hard
playthrough.
mode is just this one fucking stupid Fort Condor level that I know I do not want to do, because it is required, because you have to do it for the like one of the optional super bosses requires it for some whatever fucking reason, I don't know, because there is like a story sort of going on with them where they like appear randomly in visions once you beat them. There's a lot of shit to this game. There's it gives
I
you a
believe
lot,
it.
and I'm enjoying
Yeah.
it. Like maybe that hasn't come across in this discussion because the negatives is, the positives are very out there, and they're like more obvious. I feel
Very
like.
apparent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like the combat is great. Like
Hmm.
I absolutely love the combat in this game and remake. This one's just an expansion of remake. It's like this already good system, and it's just you give the characters a couple more things to
Hmm.
do. You get 3 more party members from the original 4, or 5 or whatever. And yeah, it's just a good time overall. And I'll say maybe more about it later. Again, I'm about halfway through this first run of things, which I don't know if I should call it that. Because that implies I'll do it all again on the harder difficulty,
On the
which
hard
I don't
difficulty.
know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I might do it because I did it for the original and it wasn't that bad. It gave me headaches sometimes. Um,
There's a
but
lot less to do in the original, it sounds like, though.
exactly,
So
it was like
about 10 times more random shit to do.
it's at least double the amount of shit to do.
Yeah.
And yeah, they pad it out. It's annoying, but overall, like the visuals are still sort of there. Like, I mean, this is a game that would, I guess, benefit from the PS5 Pro or whatever, because it's,
Mm.
uh, you know, you have to in this one and remake and Final Fantasy 16, you have to in the settings flip between whether you want good frame rate or you want good graphics. Like you can't have both. And I think in theory on better PCs, obviously.
Yes.
Once those games get out there, because they are timed exclusives, they'll eventually be on Steam or whatever. But on the PS5 Pro, you could do both. You could get the good graphics and the high frame
could.
rate, which I'm sure
For
is
the
nice.
low price of.
Yeah, because the graphics sometimes, like even in this big ass thing, because there's a lot of things on the screen. Like there's those pop-ins, like you just see it all the time, like the textures just loading in front of your face, where it's very not detailed for a second or two, and then it fills in or whatever.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's definitely still enjoying my time with it, and I probably will until I beat it. But the problems are out there and sort of in my face, but I'm
Yeah.
still enjoying it, like pretty much for the most part. So yeah, it's a cool
It's just
one.
a little obnoxious.
Yeah, that's a good word for it.
Mhm.
All right, and yeah, that will take us to the end of the video game section. If I'm correct, you don't have anything else, right?
Yeah. No.
All right, cool. Now on to music. The
Indeed.
the music swing of things. Which why don't you take it away?
All right. Music has been coming to a bit of a close. It's
Hmm.
the end of the year.
Exactly.
For the most part, artists stop releasing at the end of November, early December. So there wasn't much that has come out recently. So I thought I might kind of update on the few ones that have come out, but also give a bit of a list, a top 10 plus one maybe
Yeah, why not?
of my favorite albums of the year.
Yeah.
And they're not going to be in any particular order.
Okay.
But before we get to that, Kendrick Lamar dropped
Oh, yeah.
a surprise album, GMX, and it was very good. If you want more of that kind of West Coast, kind of hard-hitting rap, it's very obviously in celebration of the whole rap beef he had with Drake earlier on this summer. It was an incredible moment in hip hop history. It was fun. It was really cool. Kind of how much drama that caused and stirred up, and how much how big it was in the popular world and culture. So Kendrick, I don't know when he whipped this up, but he's got a full album, 40-ish minutes, and it bangs. Not one of his more like heady records. It's no Good Kid. It's no To Pimp a Butterfly. But it's a fun ride. Reminds me of Damn. Just a very enjoyable listen. Very catchy. Just solid stuff from him. He really doesn't miss. It's very impressive. And then alongside him, artist known as Father John Misty dropped maybe his 6th album, called Mahashmashana, and it's a singer-songwriter album. It is very grand, kind of grand rock, but also weird experimentations done on this album. I'm a big fan of Father John Misty. He's been in the indie circuit for a long time, and his new album, I think, is a good return to form from him. It sounds very vibrant and energetic, and a lot of interesting kind of new avenues he took, which is always cool to see. I love when artists kind of, they don't have to reinvent themselves, but at least do something new. And I think he succeeded here. But now to quickly go over, some of these are albums I've already talked about, some of them won't be, but my kind of top end of the year list of albums goes something like Laura Marling and her album Pens and Repeat.
Oh, yeah.
I believe I've talked about this recently. Definitely one of my favorites of the year. Just incredibly warm and intimate and soft, and all the songs are just gorgeous. Love the writing and the themes it explores. Damn near a perfect album for me. And then the band Freako. They dropped their debut album, Where We've Been, Where We Go From Here. A Chicago band. Just pretty interesting indie rock, indie pop. It's a very kind of energetic and raw album. A lot of great songs on there. Just something that is very almost, it sounds nostalgic to me. It kind of reminds me of Arcade Fire stuff. Very kind of engaging and energetic and youthful listen. I really enjoyed that a lot. And then one of the more underground albums that I came across this year is from a band named Tepir, called The Pilgrim, Their God, and the King of My Decrepit Mountain. Very lengthy album title. And the album itself is very, very strange and kind of pastoral, but it kind of split up into 3 different acts. It's a very interesting listen. I love the kind of rustic and but also beautiful and almost orchestral arrangements. I think the songwriting is great. It's pretty kind of heady and strange and abstract, but I think the album itself is very impressive. Another debut album, I'm pretty sure. Really, really impressive. The kind of album that like I would expect a band of like 5 years to drop. So really cool project. Another one of my favorites would be Vampire Weekend. They are, known all over at this point. Classic indie darlings. Only God Was Above Us was their album that they dropped this year, and I think it is fantastic. I think the production just sounds so good. All of the songs are mixed and mastered incredibly well. It's so detailed, and the songs are well written and catchy, and I think it's Vampire Weekend at their best. I think it's their best album they've ever dropped, and I was incredibly pleased to listen to this all throughout the year. Another album, the talk of the town, the talk of the summer, was Charlie XCX's Brat. It's just an incredibly loud and rambunctious and fun and imaginative, kind of synth pop, hyper pop, whatever. Charlie is pop queen. I've been on her bandwagon fucking since the mixtape Pop 2 came out, and I love her. She can do no wrong. This was a great album from her, and I'm glad that it got so popular. Even though now I have to gatekeep because I feel like I have to. I have to be an elitist. I must. People don't understand. She's been doing this forever. She's been crushing it for so long, and now people know. But I'm glad that she is now able to sell out arenas. It's well deserved, and she has been making great music for a long time in the shadows. Not really the shadows, but she's been an influential force in pop for a long time, and it's good to see her get her flowers.
I think out of I've heard of the GMX Kendrick Lamar's recent thing, But I think other than that, the Brat is the only one I've
It
heard
it
of
popped off this
before.
summer.
Yeah,
Yeah. Everyone heard about it. It was the album
Brat
of the
Summer.
summer, I think.
Yeah,
Yep.
there was that
Brad
whole.
Summer.
It was a movement. You had to be there
It
or
was.
something. I
It
don't
was.
know.
Um, but another album that I really, really enjoyed this year would be Magdalena Bay's new album, Imaginal Disc. Also, pop, indie tronica, synth pop, but also incredibly imaginative and vibrant. The production is so good. It fits so well with kind of the world that they create. It is so rich and just like it actually the album just like transports you. It is so immediately arresting. It's all the songs are incredibly catchy. Every single that they drop is fucking banging. I knew this album was gonna be so good when it dropped. I listened to it in Japan while I was there because I'm like,
Ooh.
this is gonna be a good one. So I'm very pleased with how that one turned out. Cassandra Jenkins, another artist that dropped My Light, My Destroyer. Really, really great album that flew under the radar for most people. She's a singer-songwriter that's released like 2 or 3 albums that I've really enjoyed. Very kind of poppy, but like gentle, almost like sophisti-pop, which is a weird genre, but it's essentially like kind of 80s production style in like a modern context. And it's a very pretty album, also catchy. It has some of her kind of rockiest stuff yet, and she does a great job on it. It's just one of the albums that I've constantly been going back to this year, because every song I really enjoy on it, and it's very kind of catchy and listenable. I think it's maybe my favorite project of hers. I think she did a great job on it. Another album by Porter Robinson, Smile, dropped this summer, and I fucking loved it. I think it was it was a great album for the summer. Very peppy and energetic songs, stuff that can like get you dancing and grooving. But also, I think Porter has done a great job of expanding his array of influences, or at least he's doing a much better job of kind of translating those influences into his music. And he's come a long way from kind of his house and EDM roots, and is now doing stuff just kind of whatever he wants, much more like of an indie tronica kind of pop, like early 2000s stuff. Really good production, and the songwriting is also a step up from what he's normally known for. His previous album, Nurture, which came out maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I think now,
Hmm.
was also great. I'm enjoying where his kind of his path as an artist has led him. His trajectory has been really interesting to follow, and I'm glad he's making such great music now. Another album from Being Dead called Eels. I think I've spoken on this one before, and
Hmm.
it's just one of those albums that has stuck around through the year, and I all of the songs that I initially really liked, I still love now. It's just something that stays with me. Very kind of dreamy and psych heavy and like fun. It's very rocky, and um, it's pretty catchy too. I like how weird the production gets and how kind of fun and lighthearted the band seems to be. They're just having fun with some of the songs. It's just like weird and riffy, and I love their recording style, just like kind of leaving in fun takes that they seem to have.
Hmm.
So it's a really fun album. Um,
Yeah. For
I,
that one, I had mentioned in person that I had heard one of these in the car radio or something. I think when I mentioned
mhm.
it to you though, I thought Eels was the group and Being Dead
Yeah,
was the album. Was that
yeah.
is that how that happened? I think that's what
Yeah,
happened. But
it
yeah,
was
and then
the
you played one
opposite
of the
way,
songs
but
at the
uh,
our mutual friend's location house place. You took over the
Indeed.
Spotify. You
Yeah.
had control of the Pentagon or whatever.
Hey,
And you played one of the
they
things,
have
and
great stuff.
that one was quite good. I forget what that one was.
Um, Another album that came out this year was the new Gene Dawson album that I really enjoyed. I think he's gotten better with each album, maybe. No, he's been pretty consistently like great. Love his kind of brand of kind of indie pop, R&B, hip hop adjacent stuff. Um, just great production. Like I said, that's kind of a common theme. If the album is mastered well and the song can demonstrate its instrumentation and vocals in a way that is nice to listen to, that's immediately high points for me. And the fact that his writing has gotten better, his voice has gotten better. I'm very happy with the album that he turned out. And then another kind of sleeper hit for me was the new Mount Erie album, Night Palace. It just came out. It's a dense listen, as
Oh yeah.
I said in the last episode. Uh,
Hmm.
it's like an hour and a half or more, close to 2 hours. And it's just an extremely abstract compilation of songs that kind of go through the entirety of Mount Erie slash Phil Elverum's mindset over the past handful of years since his last project. And he kind of reminisces about the past and future and everything else in such great writing. His pen is so fantastic and intimate, and it helps to kind of it fits with his kind of laid back and rustic style of instrumentation. But on this new album, he gets to explore with that instrumentation and goes kind of more brash and loud and lo-fi and energetic and frenetic than he has in a while. And it's great as that kind of feeds into the wider mystique of the project as we're kind of flipping back and forth on like the past and the present and the future and all of these different kind of eras of his life, and his music appreciation is all explored in such a interesting project. I think it was one of his best things that he's dropped in a while, and I was very glad to kind of have that to round out the year essentially. It's been a great year for music, and if
Hmm.
you end up checking any of these out, I think you would be it would be time
Give me
well
20
spent.
years and I'm there.
20 years, we'll get there. We'll get there.
Maybe someone around then. If I had to estimate right now, who knows? Who knows what the
Yeah.
future may have in store for this kind of stuff. But yeah, for me, I did a little bit of music listening, but like, did you look at your
Hmm.
Spotify Wrapped that just came out today or yesterday or
That did
some
just
shit?
come out literally today.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How
I ended
what are
up
your
with
hours at?
they tell you the minutes, which
Oh,
is
that's
a
right. Yeah,
little
yeah, yeah.
irritating.
Which we convert.
Um,
Well, minutes is more numbers,
yeah,
so people like that.
but my final minute sum of the year
Ooh,
is 215,000.
damn.
So,
I
yeah,
feel like not a whole lot of people are beating you there.
it's definitely a lot. It's the most that I've listened to in a year, which I was not expecting.
It's almost certainly a
The
lot. I'm quite
previous,
certain.
I'm like I'm constantly increasing the amount, and this was my
Wow.
most by far, which I did
Wow.
not expect. I fully expected to have the least this year, but I don't know. I listen to a lot of music all day,
200,000.
every day.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah,
about
man.
3,500 hours. Which that's a lot.
Yeah. I think the highest I hit was 40,000, which was a couple years ago, which wasn't too bad. I was averaging for
That's a
a
lot.
couple
That's
years
a
like
lot for most people, I think.
35. It's like, yeah, it's a
Yeah.
decent amount. Um and this year I hit
Hmm.
like 7,000, which is like maybe an all-time low or something, cuz I've not been listening to shit all year. I listened to like maybe a couple minutes per day, and then every once in a while we hit those long
Hmm.
road trips where I'm, for a couple hours in on whatever. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, I checked out a little bit more slightly since then. I was on that Neil Young part of your playlist.
Yep, yep.
I'm off the beach now. I've entered, or I have
Okay.
entered the harvest zone on that album, which I was more
I
familiar
love
with
that
that
album.
one of his,
Yes.
specifically
It's
since
probably his most
I think
popular
it's,
one.
yeah, it's his most famous. And in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 4, there's a character whose stand
Hmm.
is named the Harvest, and I'm pretty sure it's named after this album. Um, and
Yeah.
I have my personal bias from that, and also I'm slightly familiar with the songs from this, and also just the word harvest. I have like a personal bias towards that because it's like
Appreciation
maybe
for
one
it.
of my
Hmm.
favorite words. I don't know if
It's
that's
a
weird to
good
say.
one. No,
It's a good
no,
word.
I mean,
Like the
yeah,
the
it is a
imagery
good
it
one.
invokes is quite strong. I feel like,
Yeah.
and it's a nice word.
It's rich. There's a
And
lot of,
yeah,
well, there's a lot of meaning.
yeah, and the album itself, yeah, it's probably I think it's better than On the Beach, I guess, which was not a bad one. It was a good, decent one. I couldn't really tell you,
Hmm.
but I did enjoy the Harvest slightly more, I guess, and I'll probably be revisiting at least a couple of his things, especially that one at some point. And I'm now on
Hmm.
After the Gold Rush, which I'm not very far into, but that's the next one on it. So I don't know how much more Neil Young
That's
I
another
got in
great one.
this Peter playlist part two of this grand things
That's the
thing.
last
Okay.
album of his that I have in that playlist.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well then, yeah. On to
We're
whoever
making
would
our
be
way through.
next. I guess I'll be on.
Indeed.
Yeah. That's my music though.
Have you been reading any books this week or this month, I guess?
Ooh. Yeah. Yeah, you remember how last time I was like, I think I'm on course to finish The Way of Kings by the end of the year.
Yeah, that's what you said.
That is what I said. Uh, I continued on that sort of for like a week after I said that,
Hmm.
and then I just, uh, or maybe a little bit more than that, and then Final Fantasy Rebirth is like, you must.
It's a lot.
There's like so many objectives to accomplish
You
and
have
to
to
do just
do it all. You
you
must
know.
complete it all.
It's easier to get through all of that by spending more of the day doing that. So whatever time I was doing reading, I'm now rebirthing
Now
myself.
doing, yes, now
I'm running on the
rebirthing. Indeed.
chocobos and killing fucking, I don't know, ostriches or whatever. So that's my thing. But I guess, I mean, by this point in the podcast, we haven't really explained like the draw of the Way of Kings and like the most basic. Like I said, some things I liked about it, but like people listening may not
Hmm.
even know what it is. I mean, it's a modern fantasy story thing.
Hmm.
It's a book series, and this first big book of things is The Way of Kings, and it's, I mean, I don't know, it's sort of an anthology type of thing where each section of the book focuses in on one of two to three different characters that it bounces between. Um, and yeah, it's just, I mean, it's really cool. I mean, like, how would you sort of sell it on like what it is, what it's
Yeah, so
about,
it's
like
a high
as a brief
fantasy.
overview? Yeah.
Um, it's a high fantasy series by Brandon Sanderson, set in his Cosmere, which is a expensive universe that is shared beneath all of his books. They all share the same universe, most of them. Okay, but boilerplate. This is like the kind of the central point of his book universe, I guess, and the largest
Hmm.
series that he has. And so it is, as we said, high fantasy, just a kind of a world with magic, a unique magic system, and a unique kind of set of countries that are currently at war. But the world is
Because they have to
much,
be.
much more expansive. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so the characters that you are introduced with to each have their different perspectives for each chapter, and
Hmm.
you kind of follow along in their own individual journeys that are taking place at similar similar moments,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes vastly different locations. Um, and so you kind of
Yes.
end up seeing their paths and their actions kind of take place and ripple through the story, and you
Mm-hmm.
kind of see the ramifications of certain actions taken by one character
Yep.
that can be witnessed in another perspective. Um,
Yeah.
and it's that kind of grand and very expansive storytelling that makes this book really enjoyable. In addition to the fact that Brandon Sanderson, he writes very legible and readable books. They get you hooked with some interesting world building, interesting characters, and interesting stakes. And it makes you invested in the world. And his sense of
Mm-hmm.
prose is very kind of structured and legible in order to help you. You can read these books pretty quick. It
Yeah.
is
Even though
easy
they're
to
long,
get
they're
intimidated by
easy to
how
get
large
through.
they are. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
they're pretty quick to read. So um, I enjoy. I've read basically all of his books now. Um,
Oh damn.
what can I say? I'm a fan. So I would recommend his books in the Stormlight Archive, which is the Way of Kings series,
Yep.
and any of his other series. He does good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, so far I'm like not even halfway through. I think I'm like 45% of the way there maybe
Hmm.
in the first one. And yeah, even like so far, I would just recommend it to people who, I mean, like fantasy, or you like big worlds, or like even if you
Hmm.
just like stories in general and you like, you know, just seeing shit
Yeah.
happen and then it affects other people, and you like connecting stories and whatever. Um, yeah, this is a very good one, and it's just well written in general. Like as a book, it's really nice.
Yeah, it's satisfying. There's great moments. There's great payoffs. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
it's not dumb or like vapid. It's like there are
Yeah, it doesn't
stakes
treat you like an
and
idiot.
consequences and like yeah, yeah. Great series. Highly recommend.
Yeah.
I haven't been reading much else besides, so
Oh.
we can round off with our YouTube picks. You've been
Oh yeah.
checking anything out there?
I have one thing to bring up. Yeah, at some point, maybe in the I guess last month or so, I went through the Ralph the Movie Maker podcast,
Mm.
which is
Mm-hmm.
there's this YouTuber who I guess also makes some movies in his off time. I haven't seen any of them. Called Ralph the Movie Maker. And he was on this podcast called Sardonicast, which the both of us have seen and enjoyed. And he since left that to I guess pursue other things. One of those things is this podcast, strangely enough. Or well, he had already started it while doing the other one, so it's not like he left the other podcast to actually make movies. I think, which he may have just recently came out with something. I'm not really sure.
Yes.
But I did listen to this podcast, and it's interesting. It's decent. I would recommend it to people specifically who are already familiar with Ralph and like him and his like YouTube videos, and especially people who on the Sardonicast like listening to that. It's sort of just more of that because it's the first few episodes. It's just him talking about movies, and then he ropes his friend Cam, who appeared on a couple episodes of Sardonicast. If you recognize
Mm-hmm.
that guy, he's the dude with the heaviest Boston accent that I've ever heard. It's very recognizable. And yeah, it's just them talking about movies, and it's fun. It's nice, and there's only 20 so or maybe 30 episodes of it. It's pretty quick to get through, and
Hmm.
it doesn't get a whole lot of views. There's only like a couple thousand per video, and I don't know. I guess maybe slightly more people should check it out. Not that they're gonna get that many increased numbers from us. Spoiler alert for myself in the future when this gets uploaded, maybe. Um, but it's I enjoyed it, and it was nice checking it out. And the last video they made, I think, was almost a month ago, but I think they do these around every month, maybe, or I think more often
Hmm.
than that, actually. So yeah, I'm excited to see
Cool,
where it goes in
cool.
the future now that I'm caught up, and hopefully it just doesn't end like another podcast where I caught up with it, and then week after I caught up, it's like we're done. It's like what do you mean? What do you mean? But yeah, that's in the
Can't get
past.
invested like that. Yeah.
What have you been doing? Or is it just sports? Is
Uh,
it just sports again?
no, I went on a bit of a video essay tear, I guess you could
Oh,
say.
okay.
It's YouTubers that I've already watched their stuff, but
Sure. That's Sean
I
you do.
got deep into. I did watch that Sean video, which was great.
Hmm.
Also, I went into Jacob Geller's kind of his whole rabbit hole of video essays, and also
I think I've
Emp
heard of that
Lemons,
dude.
as you mentioned.
Oh,
Yeah,
Emp Lemon.
I know you know Emp Lemon, and
He's one of my
love his
favorites.
stuff. Yeah, because he just dropped the poker video, which
Oh
I
yeah,
had
yeah,
to
yeah.
check out because obviously I
How long
know
have you
absolutely
been
nothing about poker. Um, I
how long have you
don't.
been
Which
watching
was
that, man?
my relatively recently, within the past like
Okay.
2 years, I'd say.
Bro,
I think my
I've been watching
favorite,
him from since the YouTube poop era.
which is
Before he
extremely
was
impressive.
before he
Yeah,
was making these like extravagant, really good video essays. He was
yeah,
making
yeah.
like the best YouTube
The,
poops. Like he was the best in both realms, which he eventually quit
I
that.
did.
And
I mean, I
it's such a
watched that
surprising
that
change.
video essay exactly about his.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. He
yeah,
goes over the
and
history
I
of his
think
shit, which is a
it's
good one.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's an impressive like to change that much and to like make a completely different type of YouTube
And to
video
do
in
it
a
well,
completely separate
and to
genre and
succeed
be
at
like
both.
essentially the
Yeah,
master of both is like really impressive.
yeah,
He's one of my
yeah.
favorites.
No, yeah, I agree. Um, Art of the Choke and Pandora's Box are some of my favorite like video essays
Oh yeah, 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 yeah,
on the
yeah.
platform. I think both of those are just fantastic.
I like that one about the
But
dude who
it,
was maybe gonna push the button but then didn't or whatever. Like was gonna like blow up
yeah,
everything. That was a good one.
uh-huh.
Or the NASCAR,
Um,
the 70 NASCAR
but
videos he's
okay,
done. Dale Earnhardt.
he has so many. Yeah,
I know
yeah.
so many bangers.
I, Talladega, NASCAR. Yeah, he's got it
Yeah.
all. But I'm surprised you have not watched any of Jacob Geller's stuff because I would highly, highly, highly recommend his stuff.
Okay.
Um, he has like a lot of like video game kind of analysis type video essays, but also just like weird existential kind of like analyses of like anything he thinks is interesting, really, whether that be orbital lasers or the the death penalty or cold weather or the sea or whatever. But he has a great kind of mind and perspective on things, and his kind of thought process is very entertaining. His videos are great, and gets into like some really interesting kind of thought experiments that I really enjoy seeing his perspective on, and I think it's
Hmm.
pretty unique on the YouTube platform. So highly recommend his channel and his stuff.
Is there one video specifically that you would recommend to just check him out to get into,
Mm,
or like, or just go for it, just like pick any random one, because they're all good.
I would say some of my favorite ones are his analysis of video games. Um,
Hmm.
I think his analysis of the Wolfenstein ones are really interesting. Uh, I think his analysis of the cold, fear of the cold, what is one of my, I think was my first introduction to his, and it's just he'll kind of come up with a overall like title or topic for his video essay, and then we'll just kind of come up with a few individual like really interesting
Yeah.
demonstrations of that topic or explorations, and
Hmm.
it's just done in a really good way. Like I don't know what else there is to say. He's a great YouTuber.
No, yeah, I was just scrolling through shit. I added the every Zelda is the darkest Zelda. I'm adding that to my watch list, and also the
Yeah,
perfect
yeah.
moments in bad movies sort of reminds me of like, I mean, like yeah, what you said, where he just kind of assembles like a list of things of like certain ideas, and he just
Hmm.
sort of presents them all. Like I've had I have a couple YouTube video ideas that are sort of like that, where it's like these types of things we see again and again, like patterns of stuff that would be cool to explore and think about. So yeah,
Hmm.
I'll watch his stuff at some point, maybe soon. Who knows?
If you have enough time to spare during
Yeah,
your
for
rebirth.
YouTube, I can make time. Easy, it's easy. All right, is that all you
All
had for
right.
the
That
YouTube?
is the end of my media consumption slash
Ooh.
discovery for the month. I have had
Yeah,
caught
same
up.
here. Yeah. So that'll do it for this one. Which is the last one of our of like the year. I guess we're recording this,
Yeah,
but the next
end
time
of
we
the year.
record, it'll be the whatever the start of the next year. But by this point, that the video is released, it would it would already have been that next year, which is
Indeed.
whatever. That's just how the scheduling of uploading shits works out or whatever. So yeah, if you've made it this far, thanks for sticking around, and subscribe to the channel if you so dare. I dare you right now. Do it.
Dare it.
Peter, any final
Do it.
words?
Nope.